Live stream audio test. 1 2 1 2.
Hello, everybody. Are we all settled? Right, I would like to welcome everyone to this evening's meeting of the Council in the new Council Chamber. There is an option to join the meeting via Teams for those members and officers who are unable to attend in person. They will be able to participate in the debate remotely, but they will not be in attendance formally, and members joining remotely will not be able to vote or count towards the quorum of the meeting. We are streaming today's meeting live on the internet, and a recorded version will be available to view within 48 hours on the North Somerset Council website. It seems a very long time since we last met, and there have been a few changes everywhere, I think, in the country, but not least here. We said a fond farewell to two of our councillors, Stuart and Hannah, and we thank them for their services to North Somerset Council. And we offer a warm welcome to Councillor Mike Dunn. Lovely to see you here tonight, and to Michael Harriott sitting over there. It's lovely to have you with us, and I hope you enjoy your time as a North Somerset councillor. I just want to tell you also that the order of the agenda tonight will be slightly different. It sort of makes more sense to have made a few changes. So don't be surprised if it's not quite as you have before you. Right, so let's start off then. The formal business. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairperson. I've had advance apologies from Councillors Burden, Councillor Griggs, Councillor Ashton, Councillor Crew, Councillor Ellis, and I believe Councillor Clayton will be with us, but is a bit late at the moment.
Unfortunately, I've just heard from Councillor Clayton that he won't be able to make it. His daughters are unwell.
Thank you. I'll have to apologize. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Tom Nicholson is stuck in traffic, but is on his way.
Thank you.
The usual thing. There's always a traffic jam somewhere, isn't there? Now we move on to public participation, and we have 5 members of the public coming to address us tonight, which is absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. You have 5 minutes each to speak, and I'll warn you after 4 to bring things to a close. So we're going to start off with Greg Poulter, who's a resident who's come to talk to us about Hill Road parking charges from Clevedon.
Is that okay?
Yes, we can hear you, Greg. Thank you.
I would like to talk about the proposed Hill Road parking charges. The conversation around parking charges on Hill Road is focused really on theories of traffic flow, revenue, raising money, and behavioural nudges. But the reality, from my perspective, is something far more human, far more fragile. My perspective comes from running a small business which has invested heavily in Clevedon's future and has seen firsthand how essential accessible parking and free parking in the town generates economic life. A couple of years ago, we acquired a commercial building in the heart of Clevedon. For years, it had housed a local computer firm and had a team of 6 people operating. After COVID, their working model changed. They vacated the space. That left us in a serious problem. This is a late Regency, large commercial building with architectural importance, but with no obvious use. Realistically, its only long-term future might have been to convert into residential conversion. And a process which, in our view, would have taken years, and in the meantime, that building would have stood empty, deteriorating, and contributing nothing. So what did? We didn't let it happen. We took a risk. We decided to restore the building and trial serviced offices, co-working, meeting rooms, and a hub for small businesses and startups. We invested 1.6 million to bring the building back into life, not just structurally, but in a way that honoured the character of that building and made it a place that people wanted to work. The first 2 years, really tough. We operated at a loss and only broke even in 2025. But we believed in Clevedon, and we believed that we could create the right environment for businesses to thrive. Today, the building is fully occupied. More than 100 office workers use that space daily. Many of them from businesses that we've attracted outside of the district, from Bristol and other areas. And people now spend their days, their money, in Clevedon. They buy their lunch, they shop, they pick up their presents, they use local services, they bring energy and footfall to Hill Road and the surrounding areas. This is exactly the kind of economic activity Clevedon needs to stay vibrant. And because of this success, we're now restoring another property in Gardens Road, literally around the corner, and we are looking to bring another 60 people, office users, into the area. None of this works without accessible parking. Our tenants, they're small businesses, freelancers, startups, choose Clevedon because it offers not only the balance of location, affordability, and convenience, and parking is a key part of that equation. If parking is expensive and difficult, these businesses will simply go elsewhere. They have options. The ripple effect would be immediate. Fewer workers on Hill Road, less spending in local shops and cafes, reduced footfall for independent businesses, a decline in the area's economic vibrancy and vitality, and stalling investments from people like us. The success of our business is not just about the building, it's about the ecosystem around us, and creating a parking accessibility which is free is fundamental to that system. Installing new apps and trying to get people to pay for parking, I think, would detract from what we're trying to do. Clevedon is a rare opportunity for growing businesses, new investment. The high street still has a character and potential.
1 more minute.
But the progress is fragile, and introducing parking charges on Hill Road, I think, will undermine the very activity that we're trying to keep alive. We want to continue to invest in Clevedon. We want to continue to bring more business, more workers, and spending to the town. But that requires supportive environment from the council and try to keep parking accessible and free. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg, not only for speaking to us tonight, but for what you are doing in Clevedon. It sounds to me as if you're doing great things. Right, next speaker, Sue Cooper, the resident who also wants to talk about parking charges in Hill Road.
I'll stand up. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to speak today. I really do appreciate it. I'm Sue Cooper. I am a local resident and business owner in the Hill Road area of Clevedon. I have a disabled father who lives in the same area. I have a small granddaughter, and I also have 2 sons who live in the area as well. Through those connections with my community and my business, I know the strength of feeling in the area against paid parking and the concerns about the impact of local businesses and the community. You'll know that there was a recent petition that was mentioned at your last meeting where it was signed by nearly 4,000 people. There were mostly residents, local people, but visitors who like to come to the area as well. That was online and in person. Our business community offers more than just services and retail opportunities. It gives indirect support to many people living locally who see the many businesses as a support network, who check in on them and give them a welcome conversation and human contact when they need it. It's a valuable thing. Before starting my business, I had many years working in public services. I can totally appreciate the challenges that North Somerset Council face in terms of meeting the shortfalls in money available. But I strongly feel that paid charges in our area will not help. 10 years ago, in Hill Road, Bellevue Road and Alexandra Road, parking was a problem, as there was no turnover of parking spaces. In the last 5 years, following the installation of the one-way system, wider pavements, the cycle path improvements in Hill Road, we find the current enforcement adequate to ensure those parking feel a risk of getting a ticket, so parking restrictions are generally complied with, so turnover is achieved. Within the North Somerset document, which I have read, it appears that the turnover of spaces is a primary reason for charges. I quote, "On-street parking in Clevedon, in Hill Road and surrounding areas is high use and busy areas. Parking proposals have been designed to help manage the parking provision and traffic management turnover of spaces. This isn't a problem. If it's not broken, please don't try and fix it." I also feel strongly that these proposals discriminate against the less able members of our community, those who are more likely to have difficulty in using an app and have more reason to have to drive. We have seen more people cycling and walking, so those driving are a higher percentage of those less able people, as they've no alternative to get to our areas to visit the shops. Portishead and Nailsea do not have paid on-street parking, as their class is a high street. Our area in Hill Road, Alexandra Road and Bellevue has the same characteristics, so the same rationale for Portishead and Nailsea High Streets for them not to be included in proposals should equally apply to our area. As a percentage of overall parking spaces in North Somerset, those in our area are very small in number, too few that would justify the infrastructure spend or offset North Somerset funding shortfall, but presents a significant risk to our businesses. I strongly urge you not to impose parking charges in our area. These will put our community and our businesses at risk, so please hear what we're saying. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Dedo. Excellent. Right. Lots of really well thought out comments there. Lots to think about. Debbie Johnson, you're next, and you're going to tell us about an exciting launch, I think.
Sorry, it was on already. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak to you all today. I'm addressing you as the chair of the newly formed group Save Felton Common, so that you are aware of us and all the people in North Somerset who stand against the airport's proposal to steal common land from the people for their own commercial gain. I live on the edge of Felton Common, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my walk this morning on Felton Common, which was accompanied by it's a lovely day today, it was accompanied by the joyous, life-affirming song of skylarks, which were enjoying a rain-free morning, flying and feeding amongst the grassland area of the common. Skylarks are on the red list of endangered species in the UK, and Felton Common is proud to be the home of a healthy breeding population. They add true joy to everyone's day. And many of you might not be aware of Felton Common, but it is an area of great significance and importance. It has recently been described by Natural England as being land that is unique and irreplaceable. At around 80 hectares and with a summit of around 185 metres, it is a significant open public space in North Somerset and shares the area known as Broadfield Down with Bristol Airport, which is on the other side of the A38. Airport land boundaries the common, and at a gap in the hedgerow, it is possible to get a view straight down the runway on the other side of the road and stand directly under the planes as they come in to land or take off over the common. The Broadfield Down area is a relatively small, flattish area on top of a hill, and I urge you to look at this on a proper map so that you can actually see the boundary. The airport's current footprint is as big as it can be. There is no space to extend the runway with all the infrastructure that this requires within their existing curtilage. The Common has an ancient history with several rare Neolithic and Bronze Age barrows. It is registered as a site of nature conservation and was made a local nature reserve by North Somerset Council in 2004. It is currently in its second 10-year period under higher level environmental stewardship with monitoring by Natural England and receives payments towards management from the Rural Payments Agency. Most excitingly, the Common has recently been chosen to represent North Somerset as one of the 12 wildlife index areas by Wecker's Environmental Group. I've spent over 25 years as a volunteer for the Felton Common Working Party. For much of this time, I've been responsible for organising contracting work in line with the Common's management plan, liaising with Natural England, and striving to work as a guardian for this lovely place, balancing caring and improving the natural ecology with the needs of many people from near and far who come to enjoy its wide open space. Imagine then how it felt when, towards the end of last year, the airport landing lights consultation document dropped through our letterboxes. I meant to bring it with me, but I forgot, sorry. I don't know if you've seen it yourselves. It's incredible. This is not the first time the airport gives deadlines before a big public holiday such as Christmas. The airport accidentally, it seems, having previously forgotten that any extension to the runway would mean their need to extend their landing lights as well. The airport's consultation on the 19th of December was only conducted with the community local to the airport and commoners. They seem to think they can effectively steal this land to further their own commercial gain without caring a jot about the land itself.
1 more minute.
Or the people who care about it. And people do care. It's not just those living nearby, but those from wider surrounding North Somerset areas such as Backwell, Yatton and Congresbury and Bristol. Bristol's airport is big enough already and is maxing out its space. There are currently 1.5 million people under their current permitted allowance of 12 million and have not completed all the work on the last expansion plan. So why cause so much upset with another proposal which takes it outside its own property? The precedent for taking common land in this way was not necessarily being set, and we need lawyers with experience in commons law to properly advise, which is what Winford Parish Council is currently doing.
Please do not wrap up now, please.
So, sorry, I've nearly finished, but I'm just going to finish by saying Bristol Airport has severely underestimated the raw anger that this proposal has produced in people. It's big enough already, and Felton Common belongs to the people. I'd like to extend an invitation to the Council to come on a guided walk around Felton Common to see it for yourselves. I can do this. I could give you a date of Saturday the 16th of May at 11 a.m. at the car park at St Catherine's Church, where I'd be happy to take people around and show them the common and what the lights would actually mean to it to be situated.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you very much. It's so useful for people to hear what you have to say, because if you don't take the trouble to tell us, we wouldn't know. So I've written it down for everybody. Saturday the 16th of May at 11 a.m. What was the church?
St Catherine's Church.
St Catherine's Church.
Yes,
it would be really good if people could go. I can't promise myself because unfortunately my mobility issues probably prevent me walking around, but I commend you for offering people to go. Thank you.
Pleasure. And I'm open to any other day that other people would be happy to do it. I take as many people around as possible.
Thank you, Debbie. Right, okay. Our next speaker then is Jo Gower-Crane, who wants to talk about the net biodiversity, land use and food security mentioned in the local plan, I believe.
Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. This evening, you are discussing the management of BNG and nature park sites in perpetuity for the benefit of horseshoe bats. As you are aware, nearly half of all farmers depend on tenancies. They don't own the farmed land and are therefore dependent on you and your land use designations to be able to operate and produce food. In contrast to bats, I've heard no proposals to protect food production in perpetuity, despite this being in your powers to do so, for example, via tenanted, protected smallholdings. Why is that? Bats and food production goals are not mutually exclusive. As you're aware, last November, government debated land use and food security. The Minister for Food Security and Rural Affairs stated, "It's not up to me to take decisions about local planning issues, such as competing housing land use allocation. That is what local plans are for." Ministers agreed something needed to be done. The DEFRA Minister stated, "We are quite simply in a food and farming crisis." However, it should be noted that this month, DEFRA is said to spend £650,000 for its own staff to learn about farming, perhaps an indication as to why national food security is in crisis, and underlining why agricultural land use protection at locations. Why is that? If you redesignate farmland as non-agriculture, it will be developed. If you tie up land in legal agreements for 20, 30 or 80 years, where will food be grown, especially if neighbouring authorities have the same approach to land use? How and what are you expecting people to eat? Residents believe that it's your duty to ensure land is protected and available for food production for generations to come. Over 6,000 farms were lost in 2024-25, with many farmer suicides. How are you going to ensure that farming skills are also not lost? In summary, and reiterating previous requests, before you approve the local plan to be submitted to the Planning Inspectorate next month, please ensure that it protects farming, food security and food production land as a top priority, call a farming and food security
Wrap up now, please.
To reflect DEFRA's stated crisis, and add farming, food production and security implications to all reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lots of questions to find answers to there. I wish I had them all. But I'll certainly be looking closely at the local plan. Okay, and our last speaker then tonight is Alan Rice, who's going to talk to us about Housing Department savings. Thank you, Alan.
Good evening, Chair, Councillors. The savings come near the end of the speech, or right at the end. We will shortly be entering the 10th year since the selective licensing of landlords was first mooted in North Somerset. I would like to review the progress, or rather lack of progress, since that initial attempt to introduce selective licence of landlords in 2016. The initial attempt was abandoned after a few landlords threatened a judicial review of the scheme, arguing that the evidence supporting its introduction was insufficient. In 2019, officers referred to a UK government report, an independent review of the use and effectiveness of selective licensing, which they argued concluded that licensing schemes were not successful and did not cover their costs. Gemini AI's reading of the report actually concludes the review vindicated the use of selective licensing, but warned that it's not a silver bullet. To be effective, it requires rigorous enforcement, simplified administration, and integration into a broader strategy for local area improvement. In 2018, North Somerset Council instituted a substitute scheme with an action area supported by the North Somerset Landlord and Letting Agent Accreditation Scheme, but this was subsequently abandoned. In October 2024, North Somerset Council held a housing inquiry day to find a way forward. Using statistics presented on that day, Bristol City Council in the 5-year period to 23 to 24 under its selective licensing system had inspected 10,951 privately rented properties, of which 10,662 were subsequently licensed and 7,575 were improved. North Somerset Council's action area covered about 4,500 plus private rented properties. North Somerset inspected 333 properties in the year 23-24, of which 46 were improved. There are lies, damn lies, and statistics, but it's self-evident that selective licensing of landlords is significantly better at improving poorly maintained properties. What are the current arguments against licensing? Objection 1, landlords will be driven away. Conversely, in Bristol, the number of landlords has significantly increased since the introduction of selective licensing. Objection 2, the Renters' Rights Bill will introduce mandatory landlord registration, so there is no need to license landlords. But under registration, property inspections are not required. Objection 3, the cost of the council will not be covered by the income. That depends on the licence fee charged. It is designed to be cost neutral. In fact, Bristol is expecting a surplus of 1.9 million over the next 5-year period. Objection 4, there is no officer resource to operate the scheme. Licensing can be subcontracted to an outside agency. Great Yarmouth Council uses the Home Safety Scheme operated by Home Safety Delivery Services Limited. Home Safe provides an end-to-end service that standardises the licensing process for both the council and the landlord.
One more minute.
Their delivery partner model includes integrated application portal, a bespoke online platform where landlords register, verify their identity and upload mandatory documents like an EPC certificate. Fee management, they collect the licence fee on behalf of the council. Fees are typically split into Part A, processing cost, and Part B, enforcement maintenance cost. 100% inspection guarantee. This is their standout feature. Home Safe aims to inspect every single licensed property in the designated area at least once during the 5-year term. Risk assessment inspections are carried out by Home Safe's own qualified housing, health and safety rating system inspectors. They resolve roughly 90% of minor property issues like missing smoke alarms or damp directly with the landlord. Only high-risk cases
Wind up now, please.
or non-compliant landlords are passed back to the council. So the required enforcement and simplified administration are met, and that saving the cost, the officers can be enforcement, doing the most important job of enforcement, can be paid by the scheme.
Thank you very much, Alan. Thank you very much indeed. Right, more work for us to do, I think. Thank you very much. On to the next part of the agenda. Thank you to all our public participants. And now it's the declaration of disposable pecuniary interest, which we don't normally have any, have we tonight? No, I would have thought we all would, because if the council tax goes up, then we'll all be suffering. But I shouldn't jest about such an important thing. Right, now let's go on to item 4 then, minutes of the last meeting, which was a long time ago. I thought it seemed a long time ago, the 11th of November. Can I approve those minutes? Yes, Councillor Solomon and Councillor Bell. Thank you very much. Can everybody agree that we pass those minutes? Thank you, that's carried. Right, now on to item 5 on my agenda. I'm not sure if it is on yours, and this will be reports and matters referred from Cabinet from the 11th of February and the recommendation from the Library Service consultation, which is Councillor Solomon to present. Over to you, Councillor Solomon. No.
Now, can you hear me?
Yep. Yes.
No, thank you very much. Yes, I'd like to ask members to vote on the recommendations from the Library Service consultation. As you know, we held a consultation over a 12-week period, and we had a great response to it. Around 5,000 people actually put their comments in and gave us an indication, a strong indication of what course they'd like to take. Obviously, we didn't want to be in a position where we were making any cuts on library services, but over the last few years, like other councils, we've had more and more cuts from government funding, which hasn't helped us to mitigate against any cuts on things like libraries. So with the increase in children's services and adult care, they've been going up by huge amounts. It's meant that we've had to make these cuts, unfortunately. And the recommendations that were put forward was for option B, and I'll just remind you, because you will have the reports anyway, but I'll remind you of what was included in option B. It was retaining Pill Library, which is great news, and particularly for Pill itself. It was also working with Winscombe and Sandford Parish Council and Ward Councillors to develop a community-supported solution for Winscombe Library, closing the library by the end of March 2027, and implementing outreach services if a viable solution can't be found. But I'm really hoping that one way or other that we can find a viable solution. We've got a community library working very well in Congsbury, so they do work. Also, we were looking as part of the option B as closing World Library by the 7th of September 2026, whilst continuing to explore and develop outreach options with the community and according to need. I'd like to make an amendment to that, and I'd like to replace that with closing World Library by the 7th of September 2026 and committing to establish and sustain alternative provision in Will through outreach services and or community library models designed and delivered with the community and Weston-super-Mare Town Centre to meet relevant needs. So that's an amendment. Then we've looked at reducing hours as well, where we've had to. It's worth noting that we have invested quite heavily in our libraries over the years, especially with the self-service being implemented in various libraries. So we have been putting investments in, and we're very reluctant to have to make these cuts. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Gibbons. Thank you. Right, let's open it up for debate. Has anyone got anything? Councillor Helen.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not particularly speaking on the amendment. I'm just going to speak generally about the library's restructure. So I recognise that this actually could have been much worse, but I do have some concerns. As one of the councillors for Weston-super-Mare ward, I sadly do not actually have a library in my ward. The mobile library visits different parts of it every other week for an hour or so. So the libraries at the For All Healthy Living Centre and the library here at the Town Hall are the closest for the residents I represent. As a result, I am particularly worried about the 11.5 hours per week reduction for the library in the For All Healthy Living Centre, which means that library will close 1 day per week. This library also serves one of our most deprived areas, and the stated mitigation is that we will explore self-service. Not that we actually have self-service set up there, just explore it. There's also proposed 8.5-hour reduction of hours at Western Main Library here at the Town Hall. And again, in this case, the feasibility of self-service will be looked at to allow the library to stay open a bit later. But this is our main library, and again, it also serves a deprived community in Central Ward. There's a proposed reduction of 18 hours at the campus library, and that seems rather odd to me, given that World Library is likely to close unless a community option is found, and I recognise there's just been an amendment on that. And here again, self-service will be increased. These reductions in hours do not seem to be fairly distributed across North Somerset. And in the new budget extended savings appendix, which we'll discuss later, I assume that's been moved down the agenda, there's actually a further unspecified reduction in hours, saving, I think it's 50,000. The library report actually notes that library usage is increasing, but that this proposal will end up seeing North Somerset have the lowest number of staffed hours in the library's West Consortium. And of course, there's lots of people who really need staff to use a library. and can't, or for various reasons won't, use self-service. So I recognise that these savings are part of the budget we're going to be voting on, but we will need to monitor them very carefully because the Equality Impact Assessment makes clear that yet again it will be our poorest and most vulnerable residents who will be impacted. And as we know, libraries are no longer just a place to borrow books, even though that in itself is important, particularly during the cost of living crisis. Thanks.
Thanks, Helen. Bridget.
Thank you. I feel confident that these really difficult decisions have been discussed significantly and with lots of different councillors across the district. I guess I just wanted to kind of agree with some of the points that Councillor Thornton made, but also challenge back some of the points, because for me, living in Backwell and Nailsea area, Nailsea is already a library that is shut on a Monday and a Sunday. And so you kind of, but I'm aware that the other libraries were open every day. So I guess this is, what I feel that we're doing here is certainly facing difficult decisions and decisions we don't want to be making. But as per the challenging circumstances that we find ourselves in, with government continuing to undercut and underprovide funds for the services that are critical to our residents, and a library service is critical, we are being faced with really difficult decisions. I wholeheartedly support that PIL, as a library in an area of one of our most deprived areas, is worth fighting for and is really important to the community there. If other libraries need to take a reduction in hours to enable us to keep PIL open, then I think that's worth doing. In terms of out-of-hours access, I was really delighted to hear, I was due to have the training, but I haven't had it yet, so I'm not allowed out-of-access yet to Nailsea Library, but I was really pleased to hear that I think over 14-year-olds are allowed to go and use those spaces to go and do their studying, and I can wholly imagine that some households there isn't somewhere quiet to work. And actually, as a young person, I used to go to the library when I needed somewhere quiet to work, so I think that's a really valuable asset to our communities. And recently, I've been at the launch for the electronic mobile library that in Backwell we've been waiting many months for, and my residents have been collecting their books diligently from the back of a truck, but it was a council-owned truck, so that's okay, and the staff were lovely, but it is really great to have a facility that is bright, is comfortable, is accessible, and where young people and old can come and collect books. So I really value our electric mobile library service, and I hope we continue to use that. I think it's been a difficult year to negotiate what is the right offering, and I think that we really wish that some of the results had ended differently, like we had enough money to keep all our libraries open, but that's a symptom of our time. So I'm supportive that we're doing what we can for PIL. I'm supportive that we're doing what we can for the communities where we can, and I wish we were doing more. But as a process, I'm glad we've done the consultation, and I'm glad we've taken the time to discuss the different options for different communities.
Thank you, Bridget, because I must say the paperwork on the consultation was enormous, and you know I commend everybody who contributed to it. Right, it was Ian Parker next, I think.
Thank you, Chair. It was my intention to address Cabinet last week, but circumstances prevented that. I know things have moved on since then, but I do want to make want you to make note of certain aspects of the situation which I think need recording for my benefit, if nobody else's. The selection of option B from the Libraries consultation sees the Healthy Living Centre making the largest cuts to its opening times of all the remaining council-run libraries, together with a reduction in staff. The cuts will significantly impact library operations and its community. The staff of the Healthy Living Centre possess an accumulative wealth of knowledge of the area and its population, contributing significantly to the library's service quality. Over the years, the team has nurtured a sense of trust within the local community, which is an essential aspect of the service. The staff is experienced in managing a high number of unaccompanied minors aged 5 to 8, a unique and vital service which they provide. In addition, the staff is skilled in handling complexities of a diverse community, including families with challenging needs. The case for retaining current staffing levels becomes even more critical when we consider the safety of both staff and library users. With the Healthy Living Centre library seeing an increase in unaccompanied children and a growing number of school and home educated children, the need for a robust staffing structure is paramount. The library often manages an average of more incidents than is typical, necessitating skilled staff presence to ensure safety and effective operations. Organising the popular events by staff is time-consuming and requires on-hand colleague support. 80+ individuals attended one 2-hour event last summer. Last week, being half-term, saw the library cope with 272 users on one day that week. Additionally, a reduction in staffing compromises the ability to promote digital inclusion effectively, as well as the maintenance of a safe environment for library users. Due to the library being located in an area of notable deprivation, it is important to support, protect, and nurture the population. All the above reasons require the current professional staffing level of 1 member of staff in the morning, a double-staffed in the afternoon, as well as being double-staffed during the school holidays to successfully and safely manage the library and its patrons. Without this, every element listed above will be notably compromised. Maintaining the current staffing levels is essential for the safety, trust, and effective service that the library provides to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you. Joe?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to be speaking just briefly on behalf of the residents of Winscombe, mainly here. Obviously, we didn't get the result that we wanted from the library's consultation, and I spoke about this at Winscombe and Sandford Parish Council last night. We accept that. I still very regularly get messages from residents asking me to do everything I can to make sure the library stays open, but of course that is now a different set of negotiations that we have to do. And I wanted to say that I'm very grateful to Mike and particularly to Mandy for doing what they could to make this process for Winscombe as best as it can be, and particularly to Mandy for bringing my attention to the extra sentence in this long document, which says that the help that's being offered by North Somerset could include parishes providing funding to enable North Somerset to continue to run the library service in Winscombe, which I have to say I might well not have noticed if Mandy hadn't drawn my attention to it, and went down very well at the Parish Council last night. So we have plenty to negotiate for. Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
And Jenna, did you want to speak as well? Yeah, you're on the list.
I'll be brief. I spoke at length about this at the Cabinet meeting, so I won't repeat myself. But suffice to say, I am pleased that the recommendation strongly supports option B. It doesn't feel fair. It doesn't feel fair that the Healthy Living Centre Library will have to close on Monday, even though other libraries and other places also close on a Monday. And actually, I did speak about this to officers. And I was assured that there would be a way forward with maybe extended hours with the support from the Healthy Living Centre as a whole. So I really hope that can still continue, because with my health hat on, I know about health inequalities. I know the library is an essential place for people, especially young people, to make a better life for themselves and to have somewhere safe and quiet and calm that they can study. So I want to be hopeful, and I do support option B. The other thing is, PIL isn't getting a gold-plated service. It's only open 2.5 days a week, and it's going to be cut as well by another half a day, I think, so it might only be 16 hours a week. And residents are hoping to make some changes with that by relying on themselves, by relying on the parish council support perhaps, and just volunteer effort working with staff to change the way that we deliver library service so that more people can access it. So West Pill is the most deprived area in North Somerset outside of parts of Weston-super-Mare. So I do want to see a level of making sure that we're giving the support that we need to other parts of the district. I think finally I want to say that it's a little bit unfortunate that sometimes this particular decision, or recommendation, sorry, as well as other council decisions, are often framed in a very zero-sum way, where we say, well, it's either this or that, and we have to make these difficult choices. I think there could have been ways that we could have done this differently. Perhaps we could have shared the pain of closing a smaller number of hours around other libraries, and I think one thing I proposed was that perhaps a local studies library could be made, which is in Town Hall, could be made appointment only, which is what a number of other libraries have done. That would have saved many thousands of pounds. But this wasn't perhaps in time to be allowed to be in the consultation. So perhaps this is something for the way we move forward. We can't always be pitting one community against the other just because government, at the end of the day, is not able to support funding for the small libraries out there in the communities that do need that support. So that's all I have to say, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenna. Catherine, sorry to keep you waiting, Catherine.
That's all right. I'll endeavour to be brief. I just wanted to address the point raised in the amendment that I've seconded, and I think really to thank officers for taking note of the plea I made at Cabinet on behalf of the campaigners for Whirl Library. Whirl is in a special situation in that the consultation didn't really give them any choices for an obvious reason to do with the building. So I think they felt very much that the chance to create a community-based library wasn't there for them. So I'm very grateful to all the officers that met with the campaigners, have talked to them, have examined different options, and that we now have a commitment to support the people in Whirl so that they can look at the sort of solutions that you've been talking about for Winscombe and Pill, where the community can play a role to keep a library. Because ironically, Whirl is one of the libraries that actually increased its footfall over the last few years and was doing really, really well and was very important, especially for young families. So I'm just hopeful that we can find a solution there with the support of the councils to have something in Whirl where young people can go. We can have the reading challenge, we can have story time, the things that Councillor Petty's, I know, very enthusiastic about, and we want to see in that area as well. So I'm just pleased to second that amendment, and again thank the officers for their work on making this slight change, which we hope will lead to a positive outcome for residents in Whirl. Thank you.
Much appreciated. And we have Peter Crew online who would like to speak to us.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry I'm not with you tonight, but injury prevented me from being there. I just wanted to make a point about the campus. I agree with most things in the recommendation, and I'm sorry not speaking to the Cabinet member earlier, but at the campus, the Ukrainian part of the library, many of those people are coming in early evenings. Now, the original plan was to close, the manager wanted to make the 7 o'clock, not 8 o'clock, rather than 2 hours, 1 hour, because it's only losing one member of staff, because the other member of staff will be covering the cafe until 9 o'clock. So it's something that I'm talking, as chairman of the management committee, if the Cabinet member is happy, I'm continuing to have that conversation of how we can fill that hour with more throughput through the cafe.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you.
That sounds like an offer. Right, and Kieran, you wanted to address us.
Well, I put my hand up so Catherine wasn't missed, so I've not written a speech, so I'll be as surprised as you what comes out of my mouth then. So I think, I'm just going to take the floor now, right? So talking about Whirl Library, it is a shame that obviously the position was it was going to close, so I am quite tentatively supportive, I would say, that we're moving to a space of can we find a way for the community to keep that going. What I would say to the community, the recommendation is obviously to see what support Western Town Council can give, just to clarify, not Western Town Centre, Western Town Council. And I can certainly commit, and I know many of my town councillors who are also here will commit to seeing what we can do. We're up for that conversation, so I just wanted to put that on record.
Thank you, Kieran. I understand that the amendment is part of the recommendation now, so it's not a separate thing, so it doesn't need a separate vote. So in which case I'll ask you to move that we...
Yeah, I just need to cover the questions off. So fortunately, Bridget virtually answered all the questions for for the closing that Helen asked. Yeah, I am aware, Helen, that it's going to be a bit of a hardship for people because of the extra closures, but it was this trade-off between, do we close libraries or do we take hours off? And we obviously depend very highly on our volunteers as well. And as you'll see sometimes where libraries are closed because volunteers don't turn up because they may be sick or other commitments. So we do have to rely heavily on volunteers. And I'm told reliably that one of our new councillors was actually a volunteer for our libraries. So there we are. So it's very important. So in answer to your question, Helen, yes, it is regrettable, but it was an option that had to be taken. So unfortunately, that was why we decided to cut hours and staffing levels. Winscombe, again, Joe, yes, we're still very keen to work with you. And if there is additional funding anywhere down the back of a sofa that anybody can find, I'm sure it's going to be great news. Again, going over to Jenna's point about healthy living in Pill, yes, that's really regrettable that, again, there are going to be some additional hours of closure there. No, sorry, not Pill, because it's no longer there. No, but the actual point you made about the healthy living centres. Consultation-wise, yeah, I think it was a very solid consultation. So I don't think we could have done much better there. I want to reiterate as well that the reason that Whirl is up for closure is, it's been assessed that the repair bill is 1.4 million. And we don't have that money as much. And it would have been great if there had been a rich benefactor in Whirl that was willing to put that money up. But fortunately, nobody's come forward yet. Again, campus hours and very kind offer by Peter Crew. Yeah, very happy to talk to you about that one. So if you're happy with the answers to the questions, or even if you're not happy with the answers to the questions, if you'd like, perhaps...
We can move to the vote.
Move to vote, yes,
follow
please.
The recommendation. So hands up those of you who agree to the recommendation put before you. And any against? I think we don't really have a choice. Any abstentions? That's carried then. Understandable. And if you ever get fed up with reading council papers, I do recommend a good book. So go along to your library. Okay, on to the next item on the agenda, which is the council tax reduction scheme, which Mike Bell is going to lead.
Thanks, Claire. Okay, so this item asks the council to approve the revised council tax reduction scheme for 2026-27 following the public consultation, and to agree the package of mitigations to support residents who will be affected. The scheme supports around 11,250 households overall, with the changes applying to working age claimants only, which is about 6,500 households, just under. The reason for that is that, as many colleagues will know, the scheme for pensioner households is mandated nationally by government, whereas the working age scheme is subject to local council discretion. So that's why we've got a difference in the treatment of pensioner and working age households. The proposal reduces contribution rates by 8% across all income bands, moving the maximum support from 75.5% to 67.5%, and delivering the required £242,000 saving, which is set out in the report. And that in itself is a reduction on the original £500,000 saving that we had proposed in the consultation. The consultation responses were clear that the biggest concern is obviously financial hardship, and particularly for low-income households, disabled people and single-parent families. The report does set out mitigations, including a proposed council tax hardship fund, currently proposed at £160,000. As briefed to members on Friday, I am now proposing to increase that hardship fund to £371,000 to strengthen the support available alongside the other mitigations. This will be delivered via the Crisis and Resilience Fund, which is a 3-year allocation and will be at no cost to our revenue position. The financial context obviously is well understood by us all, and all areas of the council have been tasked to identify savings. The total scheme cost for our council tax reduction scheme is around £12.5 million, and the saving target being proposed is £242,000, so less than 2% of the total. Later in the meeting, we will be agreeing our budget and council tax rise, and whatever happens, everyone will be asked to pay more. But I think it is right that we act to protect as much as possible those on low incomes, and we are trying to do just that. In addition to the hardship fund, which will directly mitigate the impact of council tax increases on the lowest income households, we will also be delivering debt triage and benefit calculator promotion to maximise income for households, and we will continue to deliver First Steps ethical debt support. As part of the wider Crisis and Resilience Fund package, we will also increase support through Citizens Advice North Somerset, continue our backing through food banks, fuel banks and other services, and we will also deliver £75 in direct support to low-income working-age households to help with energy and food costs. There'll be support for low-income pensioner households and support for families in receipt of free school meals and other categories too. And the purpose of that is obviously to provide that direct financial support and to try and deliver early intervention to stop families falling into debt, to maximise their income and to access all of the support options that are available. So I'd like to ask Council to approve the revised scheme, support the amended hardship fund level so that the mitigation package matches what residents told us in the consultation.
Thank you very much, Mike. Is there a seconder? Yes, we have a seconder, Sue Mason. Any comments or? Yes, Tom.
Hello, thank you. So with the agenda being moved around a little bit, throwing me a little bit off guard, so I haven't got everything I was expected to have down, but I would like to move that this isn't proposed and that we do not cut the current funding basically, I think it's absolutely immoral that we're deciding that we're going to be taking more money from the poorest that we have, the most deprived. We've already spoken about how we're cutting hours in the facilities that very much support them, and the fund here is also directly there to help these families survive. The savings is 0.1% of what our general revenue is for a year. It's so minimal and yet it's so impactful to a lot of families. So my proposal is that actually we take that funding from the current reserves, which our current reserves are 4.36% of our yearly spending, and it would bring it down to 4.26%. It's well within the kind of the government guidelines of between 4 and 6%. I know it's not ideal. However, I think the impact that this would have on families is massive. But it also takes away huge amounts of money that comes from the government on the crisis resilient funding. And in the funding document that I have here, there's a part here about the risk management of that funding. The economic value, the economic vulnerability of residents in North Somerset and widening communities facing a wide variety of risks during the next year, some of which have a financial consequence or impact. These risks have been increased because of the increase in energy fuel costs, meaning the mitigations and interventions have been required. There is risk that part of the proposal scheme may be oversubscribed and that the budget overspending could potentially occur. However, given the funding streams for central government is finite, details monitoring will be uptaken and the scheme will be stopped by the head of support services when funding is being exhausted. to me, it's saying that actually, if this is oversubscribed, you know, we're saying that we're going to be supporting these families, but actually, when it comes to the last 3 months, they could be, you know, they could be facing the full cost of this. We don't necessarily know how much that this is going to be taken up by. We can model it, but with more and more families becoming, you know, deprived because of the massive growing inequality crisis and fuel price increases, we will see that it continues. But I just think that it's completely immoral for us as a council. I know that everyone has to pay, but these are the communities that are costing us the most for the council because they are, you know, their impact on the systems, because they don't always get the support they need before they come into the system. And the crisis funding, the crisis resilient funding from the government, from my understanding of it, is here to allow us as a council to have money to prevent people coming into the system through financial shocks and other stuff. I just think it's completely incoherent that we're deciding to take more money away from the poorest. I mean, for those of us that saw the index level, we had 86th in Bourneville, which out of 33,755 areas, that's top 0.25% of most deprived areas. This is going to hit them the most, with, I think it was about 50% of applicants living in that area. That's who we're taking money from. We're taking money from people that don't have any money, and I just don't think that is, you know, I know that we have a financial obligation, but they don't have any finances necessarily to be able to afford this.
Thank you, Tom. Helen?
Thanks. I'm not seconding it, no, sorry. Yeah, I'm not seconding it. No, I'd put my hand up because I just wanted to just very briefly note the...
Sorry, Chair, on a point of order, I don't think the amendment has been seconded yet.
Oh, I beg your pardon. No, I didn't actually realise that was an amendment. I thought it was a suggestion because you didn't...
Sorry, shall I re-explain?
No, not at all. If you want it to be an amendment, we can take it as an amendment.
No, Chairperson. It was suggested as an amendment. So far, I have not seen it seconded. Therefore, there is no valid amendment on the table.
Caritas, you'd like to second it? Okay, so we now debate the amendment. So, and did you want to debate the amendment, Helen, or?
No, I don't want to debate the amendment.
Sorry about that then. I'll come back to you, Helen, when we've gone through. Yeah. Is there anybody else who would like... Roger.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dorr, for an interesting amendment. I understand this is a very controversial area for making decisions on, and I can see the reluctance here to make this decision when it does impact upon some of the poorest in our society. So I see where you're coming from on that. And I think I would have been minded to maybe support this if it wasn't a sticking plaster, because the amendment seems to say to take this from reserves. And so do we take it from reserves and then next year we come back and we discuss it again? Or do we take it from reserves every year until there's no reserves left? So had this come forward as a proposal that was funded, maybe with a cut elsewhere, I would have been able to support it. But as it stands, as an unfunded dip into reserves, I couldn't support this.
Thank you, Roger. Councillor Shopland was next.
I really want to speak to the main motion in a moment, but with regards to the amendment, I cannot support the amendment because regretfully we have to find the money this time. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would like to speak, as I say, on the main motion in a moment.
Thank you, David. What I would like to ask for then, is there anybody who would like to speak on behalf of the amendment? Caritas, as you second it, would you like to?
I'll yield if you want to say something else.
I think I've got my thoughts a little bit more in order.
Bridget?
I'm happy
to... I think that... to me, I think that what Councillor Dorr raised here is that commitment that we as a council have extremely difficult decisions to make in front of us, and we have done this year on year. And the Green Group has actively spoken up last year and throughout the year with real reservations about any reductions to the council tax reduction. The Green Party as a policy has really spoken up about this, and Bristol's city councillors have spoken up about this. We do feel extremely committed that a council tax reduction scheme is about those most vulnerable in our society, and that the social justice is about recognising who can take a little more on their shoulders and who can take a little less. And while we have difficult days and difficult decisions, the reason that we stand up for protecting the council tax reduction scheme is because I stood to be elected with the worrying that there are households who can't feed their children, and that there are households that can't turn the heating on and other things, and can't buy coats when they get cold. So the reason that we do stand up today and say we're worried about this is because this is the core of why I stood to be elected. So it doesn't mean I'm not ready to make difficult decisions, but I will stand and say that I think that the council tax reduction scheme is really important. And one of the reasons that the key vision for me for North Somerset right now is open, fairer and greener, is we need to be open to listening to our residents, open to listening to our equality assessment, impact assessments, and recognising where we need to best protect those most vulnerable and where we need to make difficult decisions. And that is the reason that I do support us protecting what the council tax support scheme is and being opposed to reducing that support. Thank you.
Thank you. Kieran?
Thank you. So these things are obviously really difficult when you're talking about real people at the end of these numbers. And as the former senior manager of one of the national advice charities, to which many of you know who that is, I can understand why people are really struggling with this. I'm struggling with it too. But what I would say is what we have proposed from the Green Party here is an unfunded commitment. If this council goes insolvent, I can tell you now, commissioners are coming for the council tax reduction scheme because it is a discretionary scheme. So it is better to navigate our communities through this challenging time than throw them to the wolves, to be candid about it. But unless I'm mistaken, isn't the hardship fund 360,000, and the reduction is proposed at 242? So effectively what's being used here is a government scheme to support those at risk, which is greater than the reduction that's actually coming. So I don't think you need to vote for the amendment as proposed by Councillor Dorr.
Thank you, Kieran. Was there... Oh, Ash, sorry.
Yeah, I'd just like to pick up on the idea. I mean, the Greens, I'm sure, are very worried about it, but to not mention that we're all very worried about it, I think it feels like you're starting to play politics with this. This has been part of detailed discussions for many, many months. To come to this council at this last stage when it is difficult for everyone, and to stand up and portray yourself as the ones on the side of social justice, frankly, I find irresponsible, particularly when it is an unfunded cut. And I cannot vote for that amendment. I would have considered it if it had come through discussions in the councillor groups in the weeks leading up to this, and we'd had proper conversations, and there were proper conversations about how it's be funded, to pick up the point made earlier by Roger. But this is not the way to do this. This doesn't help the council, and it doesn't help the people that you're aiming to help.
Thank you, Ash. Tom, I'm going
I'll
to...
speak on that. Yeah, so I apologise, I got head in a little bit muddled there. I wasn't here for the last briefing meeting because I wasn't very well, so I do apologise. My understanding of this was that there were...
Sorry, Chair, is this the wind-up to the debate now? Because obviously Tom's the
This
instigator.
is Tom's wind-up, Tom.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Tom.
That's okay. Yes, it's unfunded. I understand that. Yes, it's 0.1% of our revenue. If we were to run this for the next how many years, you'd be able to run it for 436 years. Like this is a very, very small amount. We dip into our reserves all the time to go for underfunded things. 43 5.6 years, sorry.
You wouldn't be able to fund it for that long for out of reserves.
Helen, let Tom wind up, and then our leader will answer.
My point was it was a very small amount. This is something that I, feel myself is something that I cannot support, and I wanted to give an alternative rather than just going and voting against it. The funding from the government is to help residents get out of crisis situations, not for us as a council to bridge our budget gaps. And it's being given to us because people are finding themselves more and more in crisis, and we need to get people out of absolute poverty. What happens when people who are in this situation, because we are going to be increasing the bills for people that have council tax reductions, what happens when the funding isn't there for them at the end of the year and actually they end up further in the system and costs us more down the line? Because that's what's been happening over the last however many years, is that time and time again we've made cuts, and then all of a sudden they're in deeper in the system and cost us more. Now, admittedly, it might not be very much, but this will have a massive effect on a lot of people, and I genuinely believe it will save us money as a council, stopping more and more people getting further and further into the system. So that's basically it for me. It's not just looking at it on a spreadsheet and going, oh, these couple of things don't add up. It's the real effects of what we do as a council on people. And I think we have spent far too long as a council just looking at short-term finances, how do we get through the next year? And sometimes when we make decisions, we need to look at the long-term processes of them and what these cuts do to people.
Thank you, Tom. I think I don't want to stop you, but I just think you're saying kind of the same thing over and over, and I think we all hear you. Thank you very much, Mike. Would you like to finish?
So just to respond to the amendment, there's just I think lots of things have been said, some of which I agree with, some of which I don't. I do want to associate myself with the remarks that nobody wants to be doing this. Let's be absolutely clear. This should be a national benefit that is funded by government, and it isn't. And the problem that we have got with this entire process is that we are trying to work a system for which we are not funded. So it's fundamentally unfair as a principle. It's unfair that pensioners are protected and working age people aren't. It is unfair that we have a council tax a support system that is based upon national benefit entitlement but then has to be structured locally. It just is a nonsense. But two things I just wanted to particularly say. The first one is I think it is important for colleagues to just be mindful that in the Section 151 officer's report on the budget later, she makes clear that her advice on us having a balanced and robust budget is based on not considering further calls on our reserves. The reason for that is that we are in a risky environment where we are juggling a very difficult financial position. So it would be irresponsible to just spend reserves without thinking about the long-term consequences of that. And secondly, I also just want to remind people that if they supported the amendment from Councillor Dorr, council tax support recipients would still be paying more. They would still be worse off to the tune of around £4 a month as a result of decisions that we will make on council tax rises. So there's no scenario in which people aren't worse off because those are the decisions we're taking. But what we have tried to do with the proposal is mitigate those impacts on the lowest income households so that they are less impacted by the decisions that we take on our budget overall. And I think that that is the fair and responsible thing to do.
Yes.
Chairperson, I noticed just a few quizzical looks when Mike was opening his reply. Just for the debate on an amendment, the mover of the amendment goes second, last but one. The mover of the motion always has the final right of reply.
Just to make sure we're doing things properly. I'm so glad you're here. Okay, so we're now, do you know, none of us became councillors because it was an easy job. We all knew that at times we were going to have to make difficult decisions, and sometimes we have to dig deep in our consciences to think, is this the least worst scenario, rather than the best? We'd all like the best all the time, and we know we can't produce it. And I see and feel the passion in the room, and I commend everyone for holding that passion, because we wouldn't be human if we didn't. So, the thing is, let's take a vote on Tom's amendment and see how it goes. So those in support of Tom's amendment, please raise your hand. Those against? I'm afraid that's lost. And any abstentions? A few abstentions. Thank you. And don't be disappointed, Tom. You did your best.
No, I'm not at all. It's, you know, I didn't give any kind of warning. This is not the Green Group. This was just me that didn't necessarily have enough time to prepare for things. So I apologise to everyone for springing this on them.
Don't need to apologise. You did your best. Right. Okay. Now on to our next. Back to the original motion. Sorry, we've got to go back to the original motion. Now we're going to debate the original motion, which I think probably we've covered in some of it already. So who would like to speak on that? So Helen and David as well, because David had his hand up earlier. So Helen, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, thanks. So Tom, I just want to apologise for sort of butting in there, but you can't keep spending reserves, you see. This is the problem. You can't spend that much, 250k in reserves every year for 430 years or whatever you said. But anyway, so I just want to apologise to you for butting in to say that. And I do absolutely respect your passion for putting that amendment. And as you know, I have a lot of difficulties with this particular issue as well. But I would say I would agree with Roger that, you know, if we could have found another way to make this cut rather than taking out reserves, it might have been votable. But all I was going to say in my quick little bit was that, you know, I do note the work done to put some additional money into the Hardship Fund. I am still concerned about the impact on our most vulnerable residents, our poorest and most vulnerable residents. And I just hope that all the mitigations we put will be enough and that they will be monitored. And that also this won't be a false economy when people aren't paying, can't afford to pay, so our collection rates drop. And I suppose finally that at some point in the future, we will actually be in a position to improve what we pay in our council tax support, because that could happen. You never know.
Hope so. Thank you.
So, but I just want to say, Tom, you know, I do respect what you've done, and sorry for butting in.
Thank you, Helen. David.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The problem tonight is not of our making. The problem we are facing is a national problem, because basically this country is living beyond its means. We cannot pay our way. We could not meet our debts tonight as a nation. In a sense, we are bankrupt. And there will come a time when someone will have to tell the people they've had too much for too long, and they're going to have to go to work. But that's not the subject for debate. But what worries me, Mr. Chairman, that this council has not, as yet, prepared a long-term plan to save money, to try and live within its means. We cannot give the people everything they want. We may be lucky to give them what they need. And a case that has come up tonight that illustrates it, the car parking problem in Clevedon. That would destroy many small businesses in Clevedon. It will probably reduce Clevedon as it is reducing Nailsea and probably Portishead to a state similar to Weston-super-Mare, which is tatty, costs a fortune to park, and no one wants to come. But business rates are the backbone of this country. I'm not out to break friends tonight, Madam Chairman, I'm out for the day. I support this budget because I believe that a lot of people have put a lot of hard work into it, and they believe they've done the right thing. I respect that, so I will support the budget.
Thank you, David.
Could we have a repeat of that? I've rather
Good to
forgotten.
know that you're expressing your opinions, isn't it? Next one is Catherine.
Thank you. As a councillor from that tatty place that no one wants to come from. Yeah, I just wasn't going to speak, but I just wanted to say, like with Helen, I do commend Tom for his passion and for trying to think of a different solution, because we had a conversation earlier, and I think we all recognise that we're making really, really difficult decisions that none of us came into the council to have to make. And we all have issues or red lines, if you like, and I was very aware that raiding the budget, the reserves to do this again wasn't an option because of the advice from the Section 151 officer. So I did say to you when we were talking, Councillor Dorr, that, you know, from my point of view, this is very unpalatable. But if you were to say to me, go back to your directorate and find £250,000 of savings, I would have to say I can't do that, because my priority is to make sure that we are delivering adequate services to the best of our ability, more than adequate, good services to those vulnerable families that really need it. And that's where I feel sometimes those choices have to be made. You know, I have, as you know, a statutory and a legal responsibility to ensure that children's services are funded properly. So therefore, I feel more confident in feeling that I will be able to address some of those vulnerabilities, some of those needy families through the work we do in children's services by not asking our directorate to cut any more. And I'm sure my colleague, Councillor Whitfield, would feel the same about adult services. You know, none of us want to do this, but we are protecting the vulnerable in our directorates and in our areas the best way we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I think it gives a bit of clarification about, you know, the decisions that we're making. So it's very helpful. Right, well, there's nobody else. Oh, sorry, there are other people. Councillor Waite.
Thank you. I think it's fair to say that over the last week and a half since we've, which is actually all the time we've had to really, really prepare for these very difficult decisions, we've all been through quite a lot of heartache one way or another. None of us want to do this, as Catherine said, and others have said the same thing. This is a really, really difficult thing for all of us. However, I would like to say that I actually support the use of the crisis fund for this particular purpose. I think it's really important that we protect those who are the worst off as absolutely best we can. I think it's critical that we do that at this particular point. And actually, I think that that is where we should be using this fund. So I'm very much in support of that, and I think it's the right thing for us to do as we move forward. I just thought I'd want to put that on record, that I'm in favour of that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tom, another bite at the cherry.
No, firstly, thank you to everyone. I just want to speak a little bit kind of on the children's side of stuff and things. There's a bit here that I've got from someone that I know that worked as an attendance officer for a school after I asked him a little bit on this. And just wanted to read it out real quick. Is the reduction of council tax the reduction of council tax deductions for low-income families and combined with the high inflation are directly contributing to working families pulling into poverty. The council needs to think about the direct effects on children who live within low-income families. School attendance, poor academy achievement, and the risk of NEET is significantly greater in low-income families. The increase to council tax bill for working families will only increase with the levels of children living in poverty. Low-income working families need the financial support to make work sustainable and break the cycle of unemployment for their children, and incentivise to work needs to be actual work and not just tax it further. And the reason that I asked a little bit on this is because one thing that stand out a lot when I was having this conversation with officers was that the funding, crisis funding, appears to be quite underused a lot of the time. And I think that, you know, if we get anything out of this, that we need to make aware more of actually that the crisis funding is there, and us as councillors give it as options to residents that, you know, there are opportunities to support. As I don't necessarily think that it's the best use of money to bridge the gap, but if it's going to be done, let's also raise about the awareness that the funding is there to help families. So I think that if we could take that away as well, and just because I really never heard much about it before this week, so I think I would like for us as a council to tell our residents more about it.
Thank you, Tom. That's good advice. Bridget.
Oh dear, I think I'm going to just... So, Tom, I shared it last week on my social media. So what you do is you pop it on Facebook, and that's what I did, because I was aware that a resident, I think somebody had been involved with a car accident, and she was in hospital and had very low income, and her glasses were broken, and I think at the same time also her washing machine was broken. And, that's the kind of situation we have where a resident has nothing in their bank account, they're on universal credit, but they just need that little top-up. I just wanted to say that as you've heard, I am concerned about reducing the council tax support scheme. But I would like to thank Mike for the amendments that he's proposed of using this crisis fund, because I do think that because you've been listening and we've been having these conversations, so you won't be surprised to hear that we've been having these conversations, and that's why, it's not solely why, but I'm grateful that we've managed to make changes which has put more in that pot to go in directly into people's bank accounts, because I think that what the current evidence says is, let's make sure that people have more money in their bank accounts to make good decisions. It's their decisions, their money, and let them have access and good access to support, such as citizens' advice, such as at the Healthy Living Centre and food banks. But let's hope that our families are best supported that they can be. But I think that despite having my reservations, I am pleased with our auto-enrolment to the crisis support money, because auto-enrolment is... Because the other thing that I will share is that we know is that not enough families are actually signed up for free school meals. And when they're signed up for free school meals, then they get more support at the holidays and all of those things. And actually, that's another thing that we as councillors can tell our residents about. So using those channels, I'll continue to do it, but so can everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nobody else seems to want to speak, Mike, so do you want to wrap up for us?
Yes, thank you very much. And I appreciate all the feedback from colleagues. Thank you, Helen, for the comments on the mitigations and collection fund and so on. Absolutely, we will keep this under review, as we always do. And in particular, we will be looking at the effectiveness of the interventions that we've deployed, and we can always reconsider. And I would remind colleagues that back in 2019-2020, when we first came into the administration, we did indeed increase the amount of support in the council tax reduction scheme, because we had the budget flexibility, and looking after lowest income families was such a priority for us. So absolutely, you're right. This is not locked in forever, and if our position is different, we can look again. Councillor Shopland, I was tempted to be very critical and say that you've obviously wandered in and rambled on about something, but because you finished your remarks by saying that you were going to support the budget, I'm just going to say thank you very much for your comments. Catherine, you're right. I don't like the phraseology of difficult choices, because it's the classic way of hiding behind unpopular things, isn't it? By saying, oh, well, we're doing this because it's really difficult. But you're absolutely right. We haven't got any good choices. We're going to come on to the budget in a minute, and there is a lot of stuff in there that are just bad choices that we would not wish to be doing. And if local government had the freedom to actually act appropriately in the interests of our communities, we wouldn't do half of these things. I mean, quite apart from anything else, Tom's point earlier about you'd make those well-off people pay more in order to give better incentives and support to low-income families. We would totally do that, but we can't. We can't intervene in the system. We can't change council tax bans, and that's a real frustration. So we've all got collectively to continue to campaign to shift that. Thank you for the support, Annemieke, on the Crisis and Resilience Fund. I think we're trying to do the right things. A few colleagues spoke, Tom, Bridget, about raising awareness of that. We will absolutely try to do that. The Crisis and Resilience Fund is new, so it is a new name for what used to be the Household Support Fund, but nevertheless it is new with some new requirements. And one of the issues we have had previously is that with the vouchers that we've given to low-income households, they haven't used them, is the thing. So although they've been issued them automatically, they haven't always used them. And that's actually why our proposed approach with this, which is a direct credit to your account, is actually in many ways more effective, because they're really going to feel the financial benefit. So I would urge colleagues to support this, and hopefully we can continue to provide the right kind of support to our low-income households.
Thank you, Mike. So let's see who is going to support it. Hands up, please, if you are going to support the recommendation. And anyone against? And any abstentions? And that's carried. Right, well done. I think we had a very good debate there. Now we're going to move on to the main event, as it were, the budget and council tax setting. And I want to remind members that this will be a named vote, as our constitution, understanding Order 24, asks or requests. And Mike, over to you again.
Thank you, Chair. And just to be clear to colleagues, I am going to operate on the assumption, and I'm going to move the budget, the capital programme, the Treasury Management Report and the council tax setting document as one. Clearly, if colleagues wish to request different votes on elements of that, that's up to members, but I'm going to move them because they're so interconnected that it feels appropriate to just move them as one block. So obviously today we are asking Council to approve a balanced budget for 26-27. I have to say I was not confident that I would be using those words for most of the last few months, because this has been one of the most difficult budget rounds we have faced. And we've become used to saying that, haven't we, in Council? But this really genuinely has been extremely difficult, partly because of those well-worn explanations of rising demand, increased costs, but also this time because our funding is falling. I want to thank our staff and all our partners and all members who have worked so hard to try and come up with a balanced budget, to bring forward proposals and to work through those in detail, and particularly draw attention to members or to the equality impact assessments that have been undertaken. A lot of that has relied on good engagement from equalities groups and partners, so I want to thank them for their work on that. Collectively, officers have worked at pace under intense pressure to put forward a plan that is deliverable and lawful. Our financial position is being driven by a long-running mismatch between what councils are expected to deliver and what we are funded to deliver. Locally, the biggest drivers are those demand-led statutory services, so children in care and wider children's social care pressures, special educational needs and disabilities, including high-cost placements and top-up funding, and adult social care, including increasing complexity of need, and particularly for working-age adults. We haven't stood still. Every year for the last few years, we've rebased social care budgets to try and reflect that higher demand, and each year those budgets have still been exceeded. So whilst we have seen reductions in waiting lists and we have been able to support more people, we have seen big increases in our financial pressures. Costs have also risen sharply and in ways which we don't control. So national pay awards, the national pension position, inflationary pressures in contracts, the national living wage, which has pushed up the cost of commissioned services and commissioned care. All of that affects our base budget. And then, of course, on top of that, we had the government's fair funding review changes, which has really blown a big hole in our position. So for the next 3 years, we're going to get a reduction of nearly £19 million. Our council tax take under the proposed budget before you is £162 million, and social care budgets on their own for adults and children will use up £149 million of that. So I think that's a really important message when you're explaining this to your residents. 92% of the council tax that residents pay is absorbed by those social care costs. So in short, we've got structural pressures. They're concentrated in the services where the law requires us to respond and puts expectations on us. When Cabinet met earlier this month, we did not present a fully funded budget, and we had a gap of £8.4 million. But the budget before Council tonight is balanced, and it sets an appropriate net budget of £240 million or so for our services. A key element in closing the gap is the one-year council tax flexibility that has been approved by government. So this allows us, it's called exceptional financial support, but it's nothing of the kind, of course. It's just flexibility to put people's council tax up further. They have given us permission to increase our council tax by a further 4%. So the budget proposal is an 8.99% rise in the council tax, made up of 6.99% in general council tax and a 2% adult social care precept. That additional council tax flexibility generates around £5.9 million of additional income, and it's been critical in getting us to a situation where we can balance the budget. I want to stress that Cabinet and Council does not choose to use this flexibility lightly. The government approval is only for 1 year, and it does reflect the severity of our pressures. We're one of only 7 councils in the country that were given the additional council tax flexibility, which shows that despite the sector challenges across local government, we have been uniquely recognised as under pressure. But I'd also remind you about that figure I used earlier, a 19 million cut in government grant over 3 years. So that's £6 million in 26-27. And it's no coincidence that the additional council tax that we've needed is 5.9 million. The two things are linked. So this is very much a council tax rise that has been made in Westminster and Whitehall as a result of the changes in the fair funding formula. To put that in context, the government's overall contribution to our costs has dropped by more than half over the last 10 years. So in 2014, government grants accounted for about 25% of our total spending. Now it's just 11%. More and more of the burden for services, including, crucially, social care, is falling on local council taxpayers. But we do have to recognise that some of these challenges are also as a result of decisions made by previous councils. Decisions to deliberately keep council tax rises low or frozen before 2019 have depleted our financial resilience and our base budget, and coupled with a failure to get to grips with service transformation and, in some cases, lumber the council with loss-making properties like Carlton Street Car Park and Castlewood, and together we've got a combination that has left today's council taxpayers literally paying the price for the mistakes that have been made in the past. So we are acting as best we can to put council on a stronger footing, and our balanced budget is built on further savings and budget reductions, including additional savings added after the Cabinet report, a smaller increase in council support costs than originally modelled, as we have just discussed. I also want residents to be clear that even with this flexibility, the pressures don't disappear. We have still got a budget gap in future years, and despite the 20 million of savings that we've identified for 26-27, rising beyond that to approaching 100 million over the longer term, we're still going to have to make further difficult decisions. We're trying to do the right things to protect services for the most vulnerable, the services that people absolutely rely on, but we're doing that in that environment where there just isn't enough money to go around. There's a number of things that we are doing. First is the transformation programme focused on demand and prevention. So putting the transformation programme at the centre of what we're doing so that we can move to a situation where we've got a sustainable set of finances. That includes a lot of measures around social care to influence and manage demand, particularly in adults, for example, our person's journey work, to make sure that adults get care in the right way and in the most cost-effective way to prevent escalation and to promote independence. We've got real savings with delivery discipline. This year, we've already achieved around 90% of the savings targets that we identified as part of the budget last year, and we're doing more going forward. We are working through, obviously, the SEND and schools reforms that were announced this week, and what that's going to mean for us in the long term in terms of getting some of our SEND and children's social care. And of course, also being prudent and effective with our use of reserves and our finances. It's worth noting that in the capital programme, there's still some good stuff in there. We've got a capital programme of about £461 million. Overwhelmingly, more than 2/3 of that is funded by external grants and contributions, reflecting our success in attracting funding. So we've got big live projects like Metro West, the Portishead and Peel railway line, the Banwell Bypass, Winterstoke Road bridge replacement, the A38 major road network, Burnbeck Pier, Tropicana and more, all being delivered despite those financial challenges that we've talked about. We have got a 4-year settlement for transport and highways infrastructure, so we're going to be spending £48 million on transport-related spend, including investing more in highways maintenance, filling more potholes than before, delivering more gully cleaning than before. So we've absolutely listened to the feedback we've had from our communities, and we will be able to increase annual maintenance over the next few years as a result of government support. There's loads more in there. I would encourage colleagues to read the detail of the capital programme, look at some of the details of what the directorates are delivering. And I think it's so important that we do just recognise that our staff continue to deliver really good quality services despite the challenges that they're operating under. But we do need to be honest with people, and Councillor Shopland alluded to it earlier. We do need to be honest that people are going to be asked to pay more. Some of their services are going to continue to deteriorate, and until we get that fairer funding settlement for local government, and until we have genuine local control and influence and the power and the tools to shape our own destiny and solve our own problems, we are never ever going to be able to break our way out of this loop. So I definitely don't view this budget as a triumph and a success. It's been bloody hard work getting to a point where we can balance the books. We've had to put forward loads of things which we would prefer not to be doing. Nobody wants to be putting council tax up above inflation at a time when our residents feel cost of living pressures. But I think we have been honest about the causes, we have been honest about the challenges, we've been honest and direct about what we're trying to do to fix them. And so I would ask colleagues to support the budget, and hopefully we can move forward and deliver and continue to improve as a council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. I think you explained that very well, because it is complicated. We've all had excellent briefings, and I commend the officers and everybody involved who have done work on this, because I did not expect that we would get to where we are. Like Mike said, it's not a triumph, but it's not a failure. And I do think that by working together and succeeding, we will gather other people who will want to join us and work with us, and that will lead us to stronger places in the future. So is there a seconder for the Mike's recommendation? Thank you, Mike Solomon. Right, thank you. Right, have we all said enough? I don't think so. We'll start with Roger, shall we?
Thank you. Thank you very much as well, Mike, for the excuse me, for the intro to this. The fairer funding formula. When this was first introduced, I mean, it sounds great, doesn't it? Fairer funding formula, because that's exactly what we need. And when I first saw the description for this, I thought, you know what, this is absolutely written for North Somerset. We are going to get a great deal out of this one. Unfortunately, it seems that that's not the case. And the reality is that the government acknowledges that it's not the case, because it gives us the flexibility to charge more. So it acknowledges that its fairer funding formula isn't really very fair for us. It acknowledges that we need more money, yet it tells us that that our area is rich enough as it is, that we can afford to place this burden upon our residents. And I think that's absolutely awful. I think across the whole of North Somerset, we are not in a position to be placing this upon our residents. However, this is where we are. So we've all said it's very difficult. This is a very awkward situation to be in. Nobody wants to raise this additional money from the residents, but we have no choice. The government have backed us into a corner with their unfairer funding formula, and I will be voting for this budget when it comes around, because I think we have no option, although I do acknowledge that it is fundamentally unfair.
Thank you, Roger. Helen?
Thanks, Chair. So, same as Roger, really, I'm going to be voting for this budget, but with a very heavy heart. It's particularly disappointing for me as a Labour councillor that the government's fair funding review has had such a negative impact on us, despite lobbying by the council and our MPs. And although the government had given us the ability to increase council tax by 4% above the cap, as has already been mentioned, it doesn't close our budget gap for future years, and it will make it very difficult for our residents. The council tax is a regressive tax because it's not based on the ability to pay, and we really must, with other councils, and I know we've done this anyway, we need to continue to lobby government to change the system. But although the current government's financial settlement has not favoured us, North Somerset Council, like other councils, has also been put in a difficult financial position because of 14 years of austerity imposed by successive Conservative governments. And in our case, this has been compounded by decisions made by previous Conservative administrations, which the leader has already referred to, which kept council tax increases below inflation and accepted the council tax freeze grants. At the time, opposition councillors and trade unions warned the Conservative administration that these smaller or zero council tax increases would mean much larger council tax increases in the future. And it gives me no joy, absolutely, to say that those predictions were correct. And there was a race at the time also to outdo Swindon as the lowest council taxing authority in the South West. And that ego-driven attempt to do that has also affected our ability now to receive adequate funding. And even this 4% increase apparently will only move us down from second to fourth lowest council tax in the South West. So we've got a long way to go. So I will vote for this budget because and this council tax increase, because actually if we don't do this, the alternative is much worse. My colleague Kieran has already referred to if we were to issue a Section 114 bankruptcy notice and national commissioners come in to slash services and we wouldn't be able to choose which ones we would protect. And it's interesting to note, isn't it, that in the consultation, those that responded were strongly opposed to increases in council tax because they are already struggling financially and they cannot afford to pay more. But at the same time, they were concerned about potential cuts to services, particularly libraries and services for older and disabled people. But unfortunately, it's not actually possible to do both. Higher taxes are needed in order to protect services. But although I will vote for this budget, I am concerned by a number of the proposals, particularly those identified as having high equalities impacts, and we've already discussed some of them, the libraries, the council tax reduction. I'm pretty concerned about the changes to nursery provision. I'm not convinced at all that transferring them to multi-academy trusts will protect them, because multi-academy trusts have huge budget problems. I would like to, and I know you're going to say I'm like a stuck record, I would like to see us look much more seriously at bringing services back in-house. We're still paying lip service to this idea. And for instance, recent research has shown the extent of the extraction of profits by private companies who provide adult social care. And for me, home care is a prime target for a service that the council should really be running itself and has done in the past. I'm also concerned, and it's not for selfish reasons, by the second year in a row of freezing our members' allowances. I actually think it's a false economy, to be honest. And I did laugh when I saw the mitigation, which is a hardship fund for councillors, and publicising the members' expenses scheme. And I do particularly think that this freezing stops people like Tom becoming a councillor, and it encourages this continuous, you know, older, middle-class, retired business types. So that's why I oppose the freezing of our allowances. And I think what we'll find is when the remuneration committee meets next, they'll just whack them up anyway. So finally, it's already been mentioned, but I would like to say a huge thanks to our Chief Financial Officer, Mel Watts, and her team for all the work they've done on this budget and on budgets in previous years. And again, you know, Mike said it, North Somerset Council staff who've kept services running in very difficult circumstances over many, many years now. Thanks.
Thanks, Helen. Ash, your turn next.
Thank you. I wasn't expecting that so soon. Well, I'm pleased we're here. I mean, it's felt like it's been a long time, and so thank you to the officers, because it didn't feel like we were going to get here, and thank you to the Cabinet, actually, as well, because I know, you know, although we had a discussion about council tax support, to get to this point has involved a lot of compromise, and I know a lot of people are very uncomfortable with it, and particularly picking up on Helen's points, it must be disappointing for members in the Labour group to see this unfair funding review hitting us so hard. So I kind of acknowledge that. I think me coming into this, I was worried about putting council tax up by 9%. We've talked about council tax support, but there's a lot of people who don't get council tax support, whose incomes are stagnating or on the breadline, and they will be paying this. That's exceedingly hard. The only way you can justify it is if the other option of cutting services is even worse. And I think that's the position we're in. Even so, I had a look back to actually what is our role as a councillor in this budget, because I was kind of getting worried. Sometimes you can't see the woods for the trees. And actually, it's to have regard to the statement made to us by the Section 151 officer and consider the key budget assumptions and the adequacy of our reserves. And I guess the gist of it is the budget realistic? And what scope have you got to pick up anything if it goes wrong? And that's the way I think about it. So is it realistic, and what's our rainy day fund? When I look about what we're looking to spend next year, it's a 2% increase in the net revenue budget. That's ambitious. If you think we know how much our costs are rising, I think, and I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, they're probably rising more like 7-8% a year. So to hit that is ambitious, and it means we've got to achieve the largest savings programme we've ever done, and we've got a good track record on that, but it's just getting harder and harder every year. And we've got to also really engage with that long-term transformation. And I think, as Mike acknowledged, that's going to be a challenge for us, and we need to move fast. So I think where I am is it's possible, but it's a very heightened delivery risk in this, and we are walking a financial tightrope. And if we get the slightest financial gust, we will be falling off into the cavern below. And we don't want to do that, as Kieran said, because I don't know if it was Kieran or was quoted Kieran. We will then lose any choice to protect the most vulnerable people in our community if we have other people coming in, taking those choices away from us. So I'm actually going to finalise by reading out a quote from the report, which I think is from our 151, but I'm obviously give her the right to reply if I've got this slightly wrong. And when talking about the budget and the adequacy of reserves and the robustness of the budget, the comment is the advice is that within the context of the serious financial risks, the budget is as robust as possible and is achievable. And I think that sums it up. It is achievable, it is possible, but only if we're very careful and we don't get a bad financial gust. So on that basis, I am happy to support the council tax rise, and I'm happy to support the budget.
Thank you for those well-made points, Ash. Stuart Davis next. Stuart.
A lot of the points that have been covered by Ash and Helen, and I did agree with a few of the points that Helen said, but I think the blame culture needs to be put to bed. It's all right blaming other administrations before we get to this point. What I'd like to mention is that it's very, in my opinion, very shameful to be sat here today looking at these rises when the government have borrowed 100 billion and taxed us to the tune of 60 billion, and yet we can't balance the books in a way that should be government funded, in my opinion.
Also, I think Mike mentioned this, but this is going to affect the whole community of our entire North Somerset. Every household is going to be affected. And I've had a few people say to me that people that live in larger houses that are going to get affected financially more. There's going to be a more financial burden. And these people may be asset rich, but they're not cash rich. And usually most of the elderly people that I speak to within my village, where we have a very high tax banding just because of the location, it is very, very unfair. And I just want to know when this government are going to get away from using council tax as the tax to batter us all with. Because I think it's the go-to at the moment. Council tax all over the country is the go-to to get more money out of people that they think live in affluent areas. I think I absolutely agree you've had a very, very difficult job. And I just wanted to mention that. I think Helen touched on another couple of points about bringing services in-house, which I mentioned when I was part of the coalition group of independents and Liberal Democrats. I think that's something that should be looked at. I've also mentioned that there are other sort of experts in those fields that are friends of mine that would be happy to give the council some guidance. They've just sold Nataro Homes, which is a very good provider within North Somerset and Somerset in general, actually. And the CEO of that is happy to speak to the council in relation to possible savings. But I understand it's a difficult job, and I just wanted to mention those points.
Thank you. Is that Caritas?
It'll probably come as no surprise to you that I want to sort of focus on the emotional and the human elements in this. And first off, I'd like to praise the executive for this. When I saw them at the cabinet meeting, I actually sent them an email saying to take care of yourselves, because the strain that those things actually, what you're doing puts on you is great. And the additional work you do, particularly Mark and Mike, who with great patience, I don't know where you actually have time to sleep, sit on social media and patiently answer thousands of what seemed like thousands of resident questions, is something to be commendable. I also like to commend all council staff as well, because this decision, or what we're about to take, has created a lot of vitriol, a lot of hate, and a lot of anger, which shouldn't really be channeled at them. It's not their fault. They are passionate people who deliver a service. And as someone who used to be a local government worker, I know all too well the passion, dedication and commitment that every member of staff working for a council, not just in this council, up and down the country, puts to public service. And they are a credit, and they should be praised for that. I remember working as a councillor in one local authority. We used to have something called the Poison Christmas card, where each year we'd be put in a room and divided and told which ones would keep their job at Christmas and which ones wouldn't. So if you're looking with that pressure and still delivering service, you deserve to be commended. I was also thinking on the train down from a meeting what personally a local authority means to me. I was a child being brought up by a hugely dysfunctional father, and for a short time I was homeless and in bed and breakfast accommodation. My council found me a place to live. I was a child that was badly bullied at school. My council found me another school. And now, as a grown-up person, I have the joy of listening to my daughter play the piano, her little keyboard, thanks to this council. And I think it's a credit to local government, and I think we just have to stop and realise what we are defending here tonight. We are told year after year that there is no money, but let's put the numbers in perspective. To properly stabilise English local government would cost, according to the Institute for Fiscal Studies and other organisations such as the District Council Network and Shelter, around 15 to 20 billion pounds a year. That sounds large until you compare it to national spending, where it counts for less than 1% of this nation's budget. So I'm afraid, Councillor Shopland, the country can afford it. What we're seeing now is not about affordability, it's about political choice. Instead of funding national responsibilities nationally, governments have pushed the burden onto local taxpayers. And when council tax rises or services are cut, blame gets shifted to councils. That might be convenient politically, but it is not a long-term solution. Here in North Somerset, we are living with the consequences of that broken model. We are not debating whether to fund luxuries. We are debating how to cover unavoidable demand in social care, children's services and housing with a tax base that was never designed to carry these costs. So when residents are asked to pay more, they are not paying for local extravagance. They're being asked to plug the holes in a national funding system that no longer works. I'll finish on one request to my party political colleagues, and especially my Labour and Conservative colleagues. Talk to your leaders. If they won't listen, get new ones. Say to them that this is a national emergency. We need a dialogue in this country about what sort of local government we are going to have. And it's not a Labour solution, it's not a Green, Lib Dem or Conservative or even a Reform solution. It is a national conversation that we need to have as a country. Please, please don't point score. Please, I know you are passionate people. Don't let yourself be the shield for your leaderships. Take them up on this and say we need change. Thank you.
Thank you, Caritas, and thank you for reminding us of the work councils do, because they do good work. Luke, your turn.
Thank you, Chair. I think that when the House Secretary suggested a New Year's resolution that was we should get things right first time, I don't think he was thinking about local government funding, and I do believe this is the catalyst of this budget, which I think everyone quite sincerely is saying is a budget of bad choices, not to paraphrase. However, at least as far as I see it in my ward, I do think there is a gulf or even a chasm between public expectations, the cost in our residents' pockets, and the perceived public benefits. For instance, in Clevedon, we've seen the concerns with the concession being raised, a flawed parking charges and management strategy, which is due to some clumsy definitions causing some antisocial behaviour problems and delays in tackling it. There isn't a great deal of excitement for the more ambitious BSIP schemes, and there is the seafront. But to give the administration its credit, it did back the campaign to fix it, and it did eventually come up with the goods. And I do believe there was a lot of genuine goodwill at that point, and even a foundational level of respect for that, covering that policy point. In terms of this budget, though, I think, and this can all be exemplified, this gulf, with the parking management strategy, because it's not a fair trade between the input, the rising costs, and the outputs, which aren't being communicated or seen in public investment, which is visible in Clevedon. And, well, visibility is a huge problem this budget and all local government services face. The thing that sits heaviest in this budget for me is the minimum revenue provision, which to me looks like a tax on the future, and it will increase liabilities down the road and box in decisions that are taken probably after most of us are here. So I do think, without having an exit strategy for decisions with such a long shadow, that doesn't sit right or fairly. And the same with extra financial support. The way I perceive this, it is a temporary fix with the 4% flexibility. And looking at the MTFP, I don't see how this could be marketed as a one shot of pain and then everything's fine, because I think that'd be disingenuous. However, again, this lack of an exit strategy, I think if the argument is we need more tax receipts to fund budgets, I don't see how you do that outside of a referendum. To piggyback on Councillor Shopland's comments, I think a long-term saving strategy would be healthy to think about and develop. And I also think, as an example from the Adult Services panel, all the financial information isn't timely. I think that we can, as a council, get scrutiny better across the board at finance for long-term savings and, to an extent, transformation.
Thank you, Luke. Steve Bridger, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, look, scrutiny. Thumbs up to scrutiny. Thanks, Mike, for bringing this report. I've echoed the comments that people have made about the contribution of our staff. I've been a councillor now for 7 years. All of that time, obviously, we've been managing austerity. That makes me really sad. It makes me angry. We do have some agency. There are some big wins, some big significant capital projects that Mike mentioned that we're delivering. There's some really small wins as well. The amazing new electric mobile library that Councillor Petty mentioned. At the recent ASH committee, we were discussing the severe weather emergency provision that the council activated over some really very cold nights over Christmas and New Year. That's effectively £12,000 spent on enabling rough sleepers to access emergency accommodation over that period. That's a discretionary service, but it's a discretionary service that probably saved lives. So that's something that I'm really proud of that the council does. I find it incredibly frustrating that any savings we make to services, like the potential loss of a library, for example, will probably be immediately absorbed by variances in income, for example, from a certain type of recyclable material, or cost pressures that are locked into the system, which might mean just one additional person needing care. It can completely wipe out a really significant saving in another part of the budget. Obviously, we need to continually drive improvement in the council, modernise the council. But I think it's incredibly important, and Caritas touched on this, I think, that we champion local government, particularly when others, some national politicians or lots of people in the media are basically putting the boot in. You often now hear comments or read comments along the lines of, I wouldn't spend money on that, so it must be wasteful, or that project doesn't benefit me directly, so it's unnecessary. Those sorts of comments need to be challenged, need to be addressed. Both my parents worked all their lives in local government, and I feel that passionately. I think it's understandable, obviously, that most people miss the complexity and nuance of local government finance. It's incredibly complicated, but it really hurts, I think, to think that if you recall all the vital work that the council did through the pandemic as effectively the fourth emergency service, people have really short memories. A lot of that work has been largely forgotten, and yet so much of that work continues in some form every single day. Sadly, while our individual mandates obviously are rooted in the communities that we represent, the constraints on us, as many people have mentioned, are national. Our residents think we hold the purse strings, but mostly we're just checking to see what's left in that purse. So, like others, tonight I feel the responsibility to vote to approve a balanced budget. I think that's what we need to do, but I do so under protest. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. You made some good points there. Tom Nicholson.
Thanks. I almost forgot I put my hand up. There's some really eloquent points have been made by a lot of people, Helen, I'm going to say Ash, Stuart in particular. So I've crossed out a lot of what I was going to say. So this will be brief, I promise. But I just wanted to reflect. Look, I've, as I'm sure we all have, I've heard from so many residents, so many working families in my area who've reached out to me to share their concerns and their anxieties about the increase in council tax. There's genuine worry amongst some of my residents who've reached out, and a lot of people have said they see it as yet another challenge, yet another cost in a world where costs seem to be going up and services are being degraded. I'm sure we're all completely aware of that, But I'm just keen to sort of reflect so much of having heard so much from so many people. People are really worried, but it is clear, however, that Councillor Bell and the staff, the officers, have put in a really fantastic amount of work into this to develop a balanced budget. and that as much as none of us became councillors to close libraries or put council tax up, I'm sure, this is a difficult decision that we have to make. We have to provide essential services. You know, the work that Catherine does, I think, sort of exemplifies that. We couldn't conceivably, you know, as Ash put it, the alternative to doing this is just unthinkable. And so, you know, given that we have to provide those essential services, we have no option but to sign off the budget. And I would just note again and applaud the effort, the massive amount of effort that's been put in to developing this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. David Shopland.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate that to many I am a little bit of a slow disposition, but I am rather intrigued, remembering what the first speaker said, is how the Tory administration of this council, which has been as dead as a dodo for 7 years, can be blamed for the troubles that befall us tonight, Madam Chairman. I don't think that's quite true.
Thank you. Bridget.
Thank you very much. I mean, I think that what this discussion has shown and reiterated and reminded me is that so many of us are here saying things that I wholeheartedly agree with. And I think that Caritas did a fantastic job because he's super eloquent and it was brilliant. But I really think that what this conversation for me has demonstrated is how much we have in common, that we have stood together to stand to represent our residents, to speak up for our residents, to share the concerns of our residents. So you know, wholeheartedly echoing a lot of things. And I think that Mike gave a really good summary and really did explain that when the Conservative government the Conservative councillors of this North Somerset administration did not raise council tax incrementally, the impacts are still felt. That is undeniable, and there's plenty of evidence out there. So we can't catch up because the Conservative councillors at the time took pride in suppressing it while costs across the board continue to go up, and that is why we end up with a gap. I have to say that it is such a shame that this government has not chosen to grasp this opportunity to fully look at the council tax system, which a number of us have raised and over many years, but we've kind of been waiting to see, could there be a chance to look at this differently? And you know, the fair funding has failed for North Somerset and failed our residents, and that is something we all have to live with and grapple with and explain to our residents. And I think that others have said, you know, explaining to our residents, to our friends, to our neighbours, how council tax works, how funding from government works, what we have within our power and what we don't have within our power. And Mike rightly pointed out, local government, we have big ambitions, but our ambitions are set within really quite restrictive limitations. And I really wholeheartedly believe that we all want to do the best for our communities, but our hands are being tied both by our financial restrictions, but also by the legislative restrictions that we have. I want to thank all our officers who have, others have said, have really put in massive amount of effort. And I just wanted to highlight that, well, I know that I have confidence that we are an ambitious set of councillors across the board, and we probably make the officers' life hard for continuing to be ambitious, to believe in better for our residents. And I just wanted to say that the good news I think that we can celebrate from the last year is our work with Delt Services, which is a part-owned shared service where we get the benefits, NSEC, and especially the work our children's department has done with buying properties to make sure that we can have in-house children's homes so that our children can be cared for locally in local properties and not have to pay private organisations that hold us ransom to care for our young people. So I really wanted to praise the work of many of our teams and the transformation that has taken place so far, thanking them for the work, but also thanking each other and ourselves for the work we still have to go in the year ahead. We have more work to do. We can work together. Communities of cohesion and championing our differences is a way that I think we can all do politics differently, despite being one of the hardest up councils across the country right now, despite being one of the 7 who has to really tragically raise the council tax and look our friends and our neighbours and feel it in our own homes. We are also council taxpayers. We're going to feel it, you know. But I hope that we can continue to communicate with our residents and work hard to let our residents know what we do every day to support the people in our area.
Thank you, Bridget. Chris Blades.
Thank you, Chair. I think it must have been about 15 years ago when I first entered this chamber, and the CEO then, Graham Turner, made a habit of starting his budget meeting with a graph, and it basically had the expenditure of this council going up and the settlement from the government coming down. He called it the graph of doom, and I think that persisted for the entirety that he was here. So it's not as if we haven't been here before. The problem is the graph of doom. As I said to him, I said, well, if that keeps that graph going like that, when does it snap? And he just smiled, obviously knowing the answer was coming sooner or later. Anyway, it's much sooner than later by the looks of it. We've heard talk of the Conservatives doing this and the Labour Party doing that. I'm not really going to give blame. I think each authority, wherever you are, is going to try and do its best for its people and play party politics or whatever. But I do think it's a bit rich this year that the Labour government has actually robbed Peter to pay Paul and basically said there's the new funding formula, as we've heard. And this council has done its best to try and balance it. I think it's a bit rich to actually turn around and say, right, we're going to take that away and you can charge your residents and we'll let you. It's just disgusting, really. I can't vote for this because realistically, all the time that we've been in this council, we've kept it to 4.99 or whatever it was. And we've had to fight really hard to do it. We've had the graph of doom, we've still got it. Doom's still there. I think it's a disgrace that we've got to put we've just talked about the poor and the needy been suffering. Every single taxpayer is now going to suffer because not just us, but the other people that are putting up by a lot. There is a consensus of this country's been hard done by. The poor are done by. The middle classes can't afford to pay it. This is going to affect every single council taxpayer by putting it up the extra 4%. So, in principle, I'm a Conservative, and I don't really want to get into that spat, especially with Helen saying that we ruined it for the last 10 years or whatever. I don't think we did. We just put it up by inflation or less than if we could. But irregardless, we were trying to do the best thing for this council, just like Mike and the officers have done right now, trying to balance the books, which is extremely difficult and is getting no easier. And I'm sure next year will be the same argument. They're not going to come along with a panacea. Caritas is right. Unless someone gets to grips with the government of the day, irregardless which it is, and they do a better funding model and get better settlements, we're going to be in the same problem everywhere. And I think the LGA have already said something like 25% of councils, if they don't get something, will be applying for bankruptcy in the next 2 or 3 years. So commendable. We've got to do what we're doing. But unfortunately, in principle, because of where we're at, I can't vote for a 9% rise on our council tax.
Thank you. And Michael Pryke, Councillor Pryke.
Thank you, Chair. Mike, a year ago, I asked you what I thought was a fairly basic question about the budget. I asked you what was your long-term plan. You chose not to answer the question. You instead suggested I should go and ask Liz Truss for tips. Don't get me wrong, it's a pretty witty remark and nice little party political one. It turns out that making a joke out of having a plan has turned into you raising council tax by 9%. Yet again, we're going to be using our reserves. And I very much want to associate myself with what my colleagues have said about Labour's unfair funding review. And also just note, it's not been helped that the Labour MP for North Somerset said we were getting a 12% increase in our funding. We need to be quite clear to our MPs that what is actually happening on the ground, and they should be taking and listening to what we're saying rather than the advice of their party political HQs. Exceptional financial support is meant to be just that, exceptional. But without a plan, surely in a year's time you'll be coming back for another above the usual council tax rise. For 7 years, this administration's been in charge of North Somerset. 7 years, you've set the direction, made the choices, decided what you want to prioritise and what you wanted to cut. Now, after 7 years of those decisions, the answer you are presenting to us and to residents is pay more, get less. So again, a year hence, I find myself asking the same question of you, Mike. What is your long-term plan?
Thank you, Mike. Sue?
Thank you. You don't hear from me very often, do you? But I decided tonight to just speak very briefly. We are all not happy with what we have been having to do tonight. But I believe that we have looked and debated at the budget and everything, and we have to make that decision tonight. We don't want it, but we have to, because otherwise we will, in time, become bankrupt. And it would mean that the government would send people in. They wouldn't care at all about what we think is important. They would just say, right, you've got to save money. This is how it will be done. But it's not only that. We would be charged for that. So it's even worse. So thank you for everyone. Thank you for all of the speakers. And I must say that our staff are fantastic, because the work that they have done, and they've worked around budgets and everything else, and they have come to a decision, come to a way of working things out that means that we will balance the budget. So I say a fantastic thank you for all the work that the staff we have are fantastic, and I think that they deserve to be thanked. Thank you.
Quite agree, Sue. Thank you very much. Annemieke.
Thank you. I hadn't actually planned to speak this evening, but so many thoughts are going through my head. I am going to try not to ramble, but I am going to want to say a few things, if that's all right. So first of all, I have a big portfolio in the Cabinet. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying that because it's very wide-ranging across everything to do with environment and planning and everything in between. So when we've had these budget meetings and we've sat down and we've looked at the spreadsheets and we've done the line-by-line comparison to see where is it that we can cut something out of our budget, it's been a really big task. And it's been soul-destroying. I really have to say that there are times when, you spend so many hours looking at the spreadsheets and you just think to yourself, this isn't possible. We can't possibly cut any further than we're doing already, because we would be undermining what it is we're supposed to be doing as a council. So, yes, it has been soul-destroying. And at one point, I have had my moments and I've just thought, why are we doing this? And then at one point, an email came in, and it came from Caritas, who's sitting behind me right now. And it was that message that he just mentioned, to say thank you to us as a Cabinet. And it really moved me, and I was incredibly thankful, and I'm just wanting to say that out loud today, because it moved me and it made me feel really good that somebody was noticing that as a Cabinet, these things are not easy. I'm not saying this as a sob wail story. That's not the point. I don't need anybody to feel sorry for us because we chose to do the work that we do, and we were elected to represent our communities and to do the very best that we can for our communities. But it's not easy, and it is at times quite stressful. And there are times when you think to yourself, why are we doing this? And just by chance, and I know this is a very random story, but just by chance today, I spent an hour and a half talking to a university student who will remain nameless, but it's somebody who's doing politics and international relations and wanted to talk to me about politics and local authority. And when I did a little bit of probing, it turned out that in his entire year group at university, his final dissertation, he is the only student who is focusing his dissertation on local authorities. Everyone else wanted to do the jazzy stuff, the really exciting stuff, the American stuff, the international politics stuff. He's the only one who's looking at local authority politics and how that works. And I can't tell you how uplifting that was to talk to somebody who had a genuine interest in how local politics works and the local authority and the work that we do. And I came away from that feeling really uplifted because we had a really good conversation and we looked at how we work together as a coalition, as the four groups who are here in administration. And I was actually singing our praises, not mine, but how we are as groups together. And yes, we have our differences, and yes, it's not always easy, as the last week has shown. But as a coalition, we do represent a very, very large majority of residents in this district, and I think that is something for us to be thankful for. So I want to thank that student for coming to talk to me today because it was really good. I also absolutely want to thank all the staff in all the different areas of my work, and I'm not going to name anyone, but they all know who they are. You are amazing. You have worked incredibly open and transparently with me when we've looked at those spreadsheets to try and work out what do we do? What do we have to protect? Which things are definitely not going to be cut? What are our red lines? And that's not always been an easy decision, and our staff deserve a huge amount of credit for the work that they have done over the last few months, and particularly in the last 10 days when we've known about this funding that's been coming forward, or lack of it. So I want to put those thanks on the record as well. And so I hope I haven't rambled. I do apologise, but I just felt I wanted to say that. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Annemieke. And of course, they have to put up with us. So that's even harder, I think, having to put up with awkward people like us. Tom, you wanted to...
Hello. I woke up this morning wanting to vote against this, believe it or not, after my outbursts this evening. But after sitting with Mel earlier, I feel like it'd be disrespectful completely to the team that has done so much work at putting this together. So I'm going to be abstaining, but I still think that actually to bring a little bit of a point on what Helen was saying earlier about money and those kind of things and councillors, and I look at it and I still think there is so much more that we could do as a council to support more of our residents, and I don't think that's from a lack of us trying. I think it's because I look around the room and I kind of go, actually, as councillors, we aren't a particularly diverse council, and I think that does come down to necessarily that sometimes we aren't paid enough or we don't have enough outreach as a council. But I do think it affects what we do as a council and the communities and the groups that we look to support and how we engage with them. And I could continue along with the party political stuff, and this is broken, that's broken. But the end of it is that actually I think the entire system of it is broken. Something nationally isn't working right, and I think locally as well, when I look around the room, I think that we need to do more to make it better here as well. But yeah, I think I very much agree with what Character said about, just because your party is one thing, I don't think we should allow leaders to decimate local authorities. I think that it should be actually, we are elected by our communities. But yeah, it's difficult being my age, being a councillor, because I don't think I could afford I wouldn't be able to afford the time to do this and still have a full-time job, because the amount of energy that I put into the communities would not be sufficient if I still had a full-time job. So I make sacrifices, and I think we all in this room do make sacrifices, and officers make sacrifices because you could go to the private sector and make a lot more money doing what you do. So I want to thank everyone for, the amount of work you guys are putting in, especially Mel. Thank you very much for earlier. It was very wonderful to have that conversation. And it's great to have officers that are so open as well for us just to be able to chat with them about these things.
Yeah, sometimes giving somebody time is really important, and we can't always do it, but it's very gratefully received. Thanks for that, Mel. And Terry Porter.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't going to speak or say anything this evening, but I've been on this council now for nearly 20 years. It's a job to remember how long it's gone. But, in all that time, I don't think I've seen an administration that doesn't want to do the best for its residents. I don't care what political party it is. I think we've all tried to do our best. We might have done it different, and I know we kept our council tax down, but we did always set a balanced budget. We did keep our services going, but this council has been suffered from the time when Avon was broken up. When Avon was broken, our funding model was the lowest of the four that were in it, and we've suffered every time since then, including the police and the fire brigade. And I've been on this council for nearly 20 years, and all that time we've been looking to cut and cut and cut. We've never had the opportunity to expand and try and do better services for people. It's always been a challenge, and you've had the same in the 7 years you've been doing it now, and it was the same all the time when we were in administration. It is hard to do it. But you do have to set a balanced budget. We did during that time. I will vote for this because I think as a council, the benefit of the council, we've got to set a balanced budget. And I believe that. Although in my own mind, I find it very difficult to sort of tell people, and I've been trying to explain to people now, why it's going to go up 9%. And it's all right to say it's adult social care and children, but a lot of them are saying, well, why do I have to pay for adult social care and children? Which is true, really. But unfortunately, I think it does, it's quite interesting because a few years ago, you all sat there waiting for the Conservative government to go. Because when Labour comes in, it was going to be a pandemic. We're going to be super. They've come in. Their management of the finance has been worse than we had, and that takes something, So, well, they put up the, as far as adult social services is concerned, they put up the minimum wage. They put up national insurance. They changed the start level for national insurance, all which hit the care services, and that's all come back as additional expenditure for us. And every government, back from Blair, our governments, and the new one, all said they tackle adult social care, but no one will because it's just not possible to do it. So I will vote for it reluctantly, but I wish you best in keep trying to get a budget again for next year because it's not going to get any better. Every year has been worse, and I'm afraid it will go on like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. I hope it's not going to get worse, but your words will probably come true. Sorry. Nobody else? Right. I think it's going to be back to Mike, but I just want to say I do hope everybody's felt that they've had their chance to contribute to the debate because this is probably one of the biggest decisions that we've certainly made since I've been a councillor, and I know how much we're all feeling tonight because there will be a knock-on effect for every single person in our community. But I think people don't want to hear about party politics. They actually want to hear that we're working together to solve the problems that we have. And I hope that we're showing them that this is possible. Dan, did you want to just come in with one last word before I go back to Mike?
I think Councillor Bird actually had his hand up.
Sorry, Mike.
Well, but it was just it was actually a question for our legal representative. Correct me if I'm wrong, but previously we haven't been able to vote if anyone's in council tax arrears. Is that correct? Do we have to do some statement around that before this vote at all, or not?
I've checked, and none of you are affected.
Wow. Thank you, Nick. Any?
Dan, were you worried?
Sorry. Does that apply to any previous councillors as well? I believe there's a few possibly in council tax reserves. Arrears, sorry.
So it's on the night you may not take part in the vote if you have council tax arrears of 2 months or more.
Thank you.
Mike, did you want to come?
I was just going to be very short and say, although this council tax rise is horrendous and it's very hard to take it, we have to be realistic. We've had £19 million literally removed from this council's budget, And if we don't vote for the rising council tax, we're actually voting for a huge cut in public services.
Thank you, Mike. Right, over to the other Mike to finish us off.
Thank you. I'm mostly not going to respond because I think people made comments and observations and didn't really ask questions. And I think it's been a very helpful debate where people have put out their concerns and their anxieties and the dilemmas which we've all faced in terms of this budget and the decisions that we're faced with. And I hope that any residents who might have been watching this, any of our staff who might have been watching this, will get a sense of none of this is being done gleefully or lightly or enthusiastically. We are tasked with a very difficult job and we are doing our best. And in the spirit of some of the comments, irrespective of party, people are motivated by the right things. I have always thought that, some of the most annoying and befuddling members are all doing it for the right reasons, aren't they? So actually, however frustrated we might be with our colleagues, and I know all of us do this every council meeting, that the reality is people are doing it with the very best of intentions and are trying to juggle very difficult and very complex issues. There was just a couple of things that I did want to reflect on. So Councillor Davis-Stewart and Councillor Shopland did reference, and I think Chris Blades as well, Councillor Blades, did reference, we don't want the blame culture, we don't want to be talking about the past. I agree with you, I hate it. It's the worst thing, I think, because I am happy to take responsibility for the decisions that we make as a council. The cabinet members are, and I hope all of us are as councillors. But what I am not happy to do is when people ask, why is something happening like this, not to give them an honest answer. And when people say to me, why are you losing money on a car park that's closed in Weston-super-Mare, I am not happy to say, oh, sorry, it's my fault, when it was a decision and a stupid lease that was entered into a decade ago. And I think it's right that we are honest about that. And when people say, why haven't you got enough money in the budget when I pay this much council tax, it is right to be honest and say it's because the government has ripped funding away from us. That is the honest thing to do. So I won't shy away from sometimes saying those things. And with due respect to some colleagues at the end of the room, what I would say is the business of government and the business of being a councillor and taking responsibility doesn't just mean saying the things you don't like. It also means coming up with constructive alternatives. And what I haven't heard, with the greatest of respect, is alternative suggestions. I haven't heard savings ideas. I haven't heard cuts. I haven't heard alternative plans. I've just heard things that you are not comfortable with and you don't like. Councillor Blades, a bit of rose-tinted spectacles there, because I would remind you that the Conservative administration in its period in office did increase council tax by 6%, it did increase council tax by 12%, and it did increase council tax by 15.7%. So it is not true that you always delivered low council tax rises. There were absolutely times when the conditions meant that the right thing to do was to put council tax up by a higher degree, and that's exactly what we have been challenged with doing in the current circumstances. I was really pleased to hear that the Conservatives have been dead for 7 years, and Councillor Pryke asked, what's my plan? Well, my plan is to leave them in that condition. And I really appreciate all the great efforts that they've been making to help me deliver upon that. But more seriously, I really do appreciate the way that members have engaged in this process. Absolutely endorse all of the congratulations and thanks to our staff. And please, 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 just to pick up the point that Caritas and Steve and many others made, every day our staff are going out there and they're doing a good job. They're doing important things to support our community. every single day. We're picking up 100,000 bins a week. We're filling potholes. We're repairing damaged buildings. We're providing vital social care to keep people living independently and healthy lives. We're providing public health interventions. We're delivering crucial children's and social care services. All of that's happening every single day, and if our residents are unhappy about the decisions, we're the people that they should hold accountable for that. It's not the staff who are delivering every single day. They're doing their best, and if you're angry and you're fed up, well, I think we can all give you a list of people that you need to direct that anger and frustration at. But the people who are doing their job every day to the best of their ability are absolutely not them. A big thank you to Mel for everything, Mandy too, for her leadership as Chief Exec, and I hope that you'll support the budget proposals as set out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now's the time. Are we going to support the budget? Hands up, those of you.
No, name vote.
Oh, a named vote. So do you want us to stand or?
No. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
You're going to go round.
So members, I will go through the membership in alphabetical order. Technically, it's only the council tax setting that is the named vote, but we're taking it all on block. So if you could answer for, which would be supporting the budget and the council tax rise and the calculations therein. So either for to support, against if you're not in support, or abstain, please. So for, against, or abstain. Councillor Applin.
For.
Apologies from Councillor Ashton. Councillor Bell.
For.
Councillor Bird.
For.
Councillor Blades. Councillor Bridger.
For.
Councillor Bryant. For. Got apologies from Councillor Bird and Councillor Caniford. For. Councillor Cartman.
For.
Councillor Chard.
Again. Oh, was that me?
Councillor Charles.
Against.
Thank you, Carol. I've got apologies from Councillor Clayton, Councillor Cole, Andy Cole. Absent. Councillor Gemma Coles. Councillor Crew is apologies. Councillor Crockford-Hawley. Councillor Cronley.
For. Did we bring Annabelle in, Councillor Chard? Because Charles spoke over.
Yes.
Okay. For.
Yes, it was a 4. Councillor Daw. Councillor Dunn.
For.
Councillor Davies. Councillor Ellis has given apologies. Councillor Gibbons.
For.
Councillor Griggs has given apologies. Councillor Harriott. For. Councillor Homaris. For. Councillor Holland.
For.
Councillor Hunt.
For.
Councillor Keating. For. Councillor Mallion. For. Councillor Mason.
For.
Councillor Nicholson.
For.
Councillor Parker. For. Councillor Payne.
For.
Councillor Pepperell.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Petty. For. Councillor Pilgrim.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Porter.
For.
Councillor Pryke. Councillor Shopland. For. Councillor Smith.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Snaden.
For.
Councillor Solomon. For. Councillor Thomas. For. Councillor Thornton.
For.
Councillor Tristram. For. Councillor Tucker. For. Councillor Waite. For. Councillor Whitfield.
For.
And I think Councillor Williams is absent. Yes. That's clearly carried, Madam Chair. There were 6 votes against and 2 abstentions. Everybody else present voted for.
Thank you very much indeed. I think we'll rush through the rest of it. Okay, it's over to you, Anita Waite, using the council land for biodiversity net gain now, please.
It's the paper you've all been waiting for, right? Okay. Right. I'm going to try and keep this brief because I think we've had a very, very long discussion already, and I am just going to try and set out briefly the context for this paper. Biodiversity net gain, or B&G, is the requirement for development to leave nature in a measurably better state than it was before development took place. Where that can't be achieved on-site, developers can purchase B&G credits to deliver habitat improvements elsewhere. When North Somerset Council implements biodiversity net gain on our own land, including within our nature parks, we have to make sure that there is a clear separation between us as the landowner and whoever is responsible for checking and enforcing the rules around B&G. Where we sell B&G credits to developers, we're required to produce a habitat management plan. And the delivery of that plan has to be monitored, the outcomes have to be checked, and any breaches have to be properly enforced. Now, it wouldn't be appropriate for us to enforce this ourselves. If we did that, we would effectively be doing our own homework and marking it, and clearly that wouldn't provide the independence or the reassurance that is needed. So to manage this properly, we are proposing to enter into a Section 106 agreement with Baines, and under that agreement, Baines would carry out the monitoring, the compliance checks, and any enforcement on our behalf. Importantly, this would be reciprocal, and we would provide the same enforcement function for Baines when required. That approach gives us transparency and independence and confidence in the integrity of the process. Now, the paper is clearly confusing, it's very legalistic, and it's not an easy document to read. But that is the essence of biodiversity net gain, and that is how we intend to manage it. Now, Baines is already registered for this particular work, so as I say, it is a reciprocal arrangement, and I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone's got them. Thank you.
Thank you, Annemieke. Do we need a seconder? Yes, thank you, Dan. Okay. Any questions? Ash?
Yeah, a quick one. The report talks about development schemes for the BNG net gain and possibly selling to private developers. Is that the credits? Because I read it as the land.
No, it's the credits. Okay, we don't sell the land. Definitely not selling the land.
Thank you for that clarification. Bridget?
So at the top of the report, it mentions Bristol and Somerset Council as well, and South Gloss. So I just wanted a little bit of clarity because you only referred to Baines then. But my second comment and question is that we had a resident come and speak to us about land and food production. And I just wanted to highlight an experience that I've had in my area. So the bats are we have these lesser horseshoe bats and greater horseshoe bats, which are extremely significant nationally as a really important species. Well, when we talk about BNG specifically for the bat mitigation, what the bats require is farmland that's being farmed. And I think that people don't always know that. And so somebody might come and say, oh, you're just making kind of nice environmental parks or something. But actually, what that does, by saying you're doing a BNG associated with bat mitigation, is with what you're doing is you're locking in long-term farming on that landscape, because it's the need to have cattle grazing because they need the habitat and they need the insects that are based on the cattle. So it's really interesting, and it makes us really special, so we can talk about bats and cattle all day.
Yeah, well, that's something I've learned. Thank you very much. Catherine. Oh, sorry, yeah. Tom.
Yes, me? Yeah, okay, thanks for that. It is. It does sound quite legalistic, but it is an interesting and important matter, as Councillor Petty's highlighted with her talk. So I was just wondering if you and I can work together to make this more accessible to people to understand, particularly maybe talking to the Youth Parliament and groups like that, so they understand the importance of that in a nice, friendly, interesting way.
I'd be more than happy to do that. And actually, I would just want to add to what Bridget just said earlier, Councillor Petty said earlier. Yes, it is all about farming and having cattle grazing those lands, but it's a bit more than that even, because it has to ideally be organically managed. So it is an absolute double whammy as far as the environment is concerned, and it's a really wonderful thing to do. So yes, Catherine, I'd be more than happy to do that. Thank you.
Tom Nicholson.
Well, thanks. It's not so much of a question, actually. I was just going to say I'm a fan of land banking, and thank you. It's a weird thing to be a fan of, potentially, but I thank you for just want to thank you for the report, and your officers, noting was Esther Coffin-Smith, I think, who wrote it, the author. Prepared the report, sorry. Outside of the council, I work in critical national infrastructure, and I believe very firmly that the proposals herein are pragmatic and sensible, and will benefit national infrastructure, benefit the council and our communities, and I think they represent a positive move in policy. So thank you for your report.
Thank you for that too. That's really good to know.
Yeah.
If I can just respond to Councillor Petty's point about the other councils, the idea is, at the moment, we've been approached by Baines to do a reciprocal with them, but rather than exciting you with such a legalistic report again in the future, we're building in the ability that we could do it for South Gloss or Bristol. I wouldn't want to excite you too often.
Well said. Right. Do we have a seconder for the recommended Dan? So we can... Oh, did you want to talk?
I wasn't going to. I think we've heard enough about cow dung, but most of the members who spout it have already left the chamber, so it's... yeah, I'm obviously...
Time to vote then. Right, all those in favour of the recommendation? That's before us. And that's carried, thank you. And over to Catherine for the corporate planning report.
Corporate parenting, yes. Thank you.
Sorry, corporate parenting. My glasses are on.
And everyone's leaving.
Sorry. Sorry, Catherine.
I didn't speak earlier when everyone was expressing their thanks to all the officers and the teams we work with, because I knew I had this coming up, and I was going to take a moment to add my thanks particularly to all the teams in children's services, because I think, bearing in mind what Caritas was saying about the work that councils do, there is so much that we do on a regular basis that 90% of the population don't really see. That's because they haven't happened to need it. But when you do need it, you realise how important it is. And a lot of what happens with vulnerable families, with children, is something that people don't hear about. And I think what we're looking at here, the report about the virtual school, is exactly one of those things most people don't think about. They're probably not even aware that we have that responsibility, or even what the virtual school actually is. So I'm hoping that you've all read this report and inwardly digested it. So basically, I think it's remarkable that we have a team of people who are so committed that it's not just a requirement that they track the progress of children who have previously been in our care or are, have other needs. They track the progress, they ensure every child has an education plan, they work with schools and other professionals to give advice, and they actually work as a virtual school with 94 education settings inside and outside North Somerset. We, as corporate parents, as I know you find I'm constantly reminding you are, so we have not only to carry out their statutory duty, but we have a profound responsibility because we are entrusted, I think, with championing the life chances of children, and particularly these children and young people who may have already experienced disruption, instability and adversity. And education is one of the most powerful protective factors that we can offer them. So the virtual school, though not a physical building, is a really dedicated team ensuring that our children in care, care-experienced young people and children with a social worker are supported adequate to engage, progress and succeed, tracking their outcomes, strengthening their personal educational plans and working closely with schools. We're able to intervene early when any challenges arise. You can see in this report the impact's clear. We've had a 26% rise in children of care age, school age in care. 72% identified with SEND. But we have strong primary attendance and, crucially, no permanent exclusions. So that means that the children are remaining connected to their schools, their friendship groups and routines, a stability that's really vital for learning and well-being. We're also seeing encouraging improvements in GCSE outcomes, post-16 participation and reductions, just let me move the report on, and reductions in the number of young people who are not in employment, education or training, although that is still higher than we would like to see. So this report reflects the work and the strength of partnerships into early intervention and trauma-informed child-centred practice. It clearly aligns with our Council's commitment to recognise care experience as a protected characteristic within the Council, acknowledging always that children and young people with lived experience of care face disproportionate barriers and inequalities. So our ambition must always remain high, particularly around secondary attendance, transitions, and even reducing suspensions further. Because for our children, education is not simply about attainment. It is about stability, it's about belonging, and it's about future opportunity. So as corporate parents, I just want to ask you to always ask yourselves, are we doing enough, not just to support children, but to actively widen their aspirations and encourage them to believe more bravely about what is possible for their lives. So thank you, and I won't talk any longer because it's been a long meeting. So thank you, everyone. And once again, thanks to everybody in the Children's Services team for the work on the budget, which, as Councillor Waite said, has been on occasion soul-destroying, and I'm not competing, but I also have a very large portfolio, and it's been a lot of work, not my work, but officers, and I think it's been hard for all our staff, but we have passed a balanced budget, so thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Catherine, and it's great to know that the money that we do have and that we're protecting is going to be used so well. Okay, now the forward plan. I think we've all read it. Is there anything that we need to do more than just note it? I think probably at this time of the evening, not. Okay, so that's noted by all of us. And question time. I think we've all had quite a large say today, so I am going to ask you to try and reduce the number. And also, please, can I remind members to supply the clerk with a note of their question for inclusion in the minutes. Right, Councillor Davis, would you like to start us off?
I know we've had a long night, but it's a very important safeguarding issue. I wanted to ask Councillor Crockford-Hawley of licensing. Over a year ago, I was questioned in this chamber by council officers and other members of the licensing committee in relation to Wolverhampton licensing taxes. I did send you an email on the 11th of December last year, stating that there has been a significant report from the BBC, who I don't particularly support, but there we go, in relation to Wolverhampton taxes being linked to the grooming gang inquiry, with a number of their licensed taxi drivers being investigated for serious offences, including sexual exploitation. On that gain, I would like to understand what has happened over the last 12 months within licensing, because the council officers themselves were liaising with Wolverhampton over this licensing issue. Wolverhampton has has a reputation of giving out licences left, right and centre at a lower cost all over the country, apparently. So I would just like to know where we've got with that, please.
I think it would be inappropriate for me to make any statement about Wolverhampton. I would defer to legal officers to give you an answer which they will be able to do. If I say something now which is not factually accurate, I know we're in a council chamber and some people don't actually worry too much about that, but this is a matter of law and I'm not going to make any mistakes in my response. So I'll defer to the solicitor at some stage to ensure you have an answer to those points.
Thank you, Councillor. So I will get the licensing team to give you a written answer. I think your concerns are shared. Wolverhampton do have a certain reputation, but I believe also there was looking at that nationally as to who could license for which different areas. So it might be a wider topic than just our own, but I will pass it on to licensing and get you an answer.
Thank you, Nick. Councillor Pryke.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to Councillor Caniford. I'm sure that he will want to join me in welcoming Councillor Harriott to this place, and I was particularly glad to see that during the recent Clevedon South by-election, all candidates representing members of the coalition finally came round to the Conservative policy of scrapping the new parking charges in Clevedon. Can you confirm when that will be taking place?
Thank you. No, I can't confirm anything of the such, but what I can confirm is that North Somerset will have a fair and consistent parking policy.
Thank you. Councillor Tristan.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question for Councillor Mallion, and it's about disabled parking bays. North Somerset, I've been advised, has a policy of only ever having advisory disabled parking bays, and certainly in my ward, this is a significant problem in one area of housing for vulnerable people. So I would like to ask whether there is the possibility of there ever being an exception to only having advisory parking bays. Because in this particular place, it means that there are more disabled people than there are parking bays, and they depend on the goodwill of their neighbours to be able to get parking spaces in front of their house. There has been advice from our own highways officers about how these bays should be changed to try and improve matters, and the disabled residents would then have to pay £90 per bay to have them altered, which they feel is very unjust. So there's two parts to this question. One, can we have a change on there only ever being advisory parking bays? And number two, particularly when our own highways department advise changes, might the £90 fee for making those changes be waived? Thank you.
Chair, thank you. And Joe, thank you for your question, and also thank you for the courtesy of sharing it with me beforehand, which is appreciated. So I have checked with our officers. We only do mandatory bays. We don't do mandatory bays. We only do advisory bays. I'm told that that's broadly in line with what the rest of the country is doing. In your email to me, you made reference to some photographic evidence of an exception. If you're able to share that with me at some stage, that would be good. And is that in relation to North Somerset or elsewhere? It is in relation to North Somerset, so that would be good for me to see that. The big problem is the cost, because a mandatory bay, which is possible, would need a TRO, and I'm advised that that pushes the cost to over £2,000 per bay, whereas the advisory bays can be, in the first instance, can be about £190, £200, and alterations to them are about £90. Whilst it's legally possible to do that, there is a massive implication to doing that, particularly in terms of the council's budget. As to the alteration fee, I believe you were talking about a change to the orientation of the bay. Again, these fees are currently baked into our budget that we've been debating tonight. Again, I'm advised that they are in line with government advice and council standards across the country, and that's just what our situation is at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Hugh. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question to Councillor Caniford. I'd like to thank the Cabinet member for his administration's U-turn after the Cabinet rejected a Conservative amendment to the parking management strategy that called for an investment strategy to use the revenues. There's now a maintenance and reinvestment fund being created. Why wasn't this laid out in detail in the policy?
Did you just say it was a U-turn? That's why it wouldn't be in the policy.
Well, you rejected the amendment, but now you've made a fund which would suggest the amendment was accepted.
I'll have to get back to him. I haven't got a clue what he's talking about, Chair. So.
Okay, Mark, it's late. Okay, Councillor Charles.
This one's on behalf of Portishead Town Council, and it's for the Executive Member for Highways. Portishead Town Council has made several requests over the last 18 months or so for the road safety improvements around local schools and other incident black spots. To date, none have been approved and none have been rejected, and there is almost no communication regarding the status of the requests. Could the member for Highways commit to 1, regular publication of the number of requests in the open door process per parish with basic details of location and their status, 2, establishing a process where local parishes can prioritise their own scheme, review the North Somerset Council decisions and work with them on solutions to improve road safety, which may include parishes' part funding works. And apologies for not emailing it to you, but my train reception was terrible.
Thank you. Hugh?
Garitas, thank you very much for your question. There was quite a bit in there. If you and I have an email exchange, we'll get on the case. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Snowden.
Hello. Another one for Councillor Hugh. Given the closure of Junction 19 on the M5 for bridge works scheduled for the 7th of March 26, will you be able to address the uncertainty that has been caused by North Somerset's temporary traffic order SW 2526-259 and publish a full description of what is closed and when, and what diversion routes there are, and what is happening to the buses, so the residents can get a better plan for their journeys? We've got Portishead and Portbury Dock relies upon Junction 19 as a major route, so this closure is very likely to cause a lot of traffic chaos in Portishead and surrounding villages.
Thank you, Chair. I think I might refer the councillor to the question I gave earlier on that one. If you'd like to share it with me by email, I will make sure that you get a response to your points, and if there's anything that needs following up, we'll do that.
I'll send it to you already. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, you have sent it already? That is tonight, I assume, then, is it? OK, thank you.
Councillor Cronley.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to Councillor Waite. The taxiway behind the food works has been a fly tipping hotspot for a long time, and residents are frustrated that blight continues and has continued for a while. If you were to attend the taxiway, you'll see kind of domestic and commercial waste kind of dumped around the area, and it must cost the council thousands to clean up. And for me, I think there's definitely money to be saved by installing CCTV or something akin. And in addition to that, there's a planning application to withdraw a planning condition that the site must be secured, which obviously must be opposed. That seems nonsense. Can the Cabinet member confirm if the Council is committed to clearing up that fly tipping, and moreover, whether there are plans that can be brought forward to reduce the likelihood of that, i.e. highly likely the securing of CCTV?
Thank you, Councillor Cronley, for actually giving me advance notice of this, because it's quite a complex one. So I've gone back to the different departments that are dealing with the different aspects of this. Let's do the last bit first, the planning condition. There is a query of the planning condition, and the position as it stands now is that there are 2 applications outstanding, one to discharge the condition and the second to delete it altogether. We wouldn't normally pursue enforcement action whilst an application is pending consideration. Neither application has been determined as of yet, and I have requested that officers provide me with a full update, which I will share with you in due course. So I will definitely come back to you on that one. Regards the issue of fly tipping, yes, I have discussed that with the team in terms of getting it cleared, but I can also confirm that the Safer Community Services team is now arranging to get a quote to have 360-degree cameras installed on that location, which will feed back directly into the CCTV control room. This will allow much better coverage of the whole area, and it will allow some very much needed evidence to catch the person doing the fly tipping. So we will get on that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Annemieka. Councillor Dorr next, I think it was.
I withdraw. I've done enough talking for this evening.
Okay, and then Dan.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. Question for Councillor Solomon. Apologies, Mike, for not giving you foresight. I've just wrote the question. As well as being a local councillor, I'm also chair of Yatton Junior Football Club. the club has lost over almost all matches over the last 2 months due to the winter's rains. Would you agree to working with me and other interested parties in making sure our North Somerset sports facilities are fit for a changing climate?
Of course I would. Anything I can do, just let me know. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say. Thank you. Okay, and Councillor Solomon, you had a question as well.
Well, it's not a question. I to the fly tipping and the CCTV. I spoke with the CCTV team today about that particular location, and the quotes they're getting are absolutely colossal. But we have got some council land there, so we're investigating that. I didn't have a chance to speak to you about it, Amika.
Thank you very much. I think that's the end of the questions. I think everybody's had a chance, and I think, you know, we've covered quite a lot of things in those questions. It really shows all the things that our council does. Motions by members, we have none. Petitions to be presented, I think we have a petition. Is that correct? Yeah, from Jenna, isn't it? So you have a petition to present, and I just wanted to know if you wanted it to be referred to the relevant Policy and Scrutiny Committee or...
Yes, I think the number of signatures is 815 confirmed from my side, and I believe Democratic Services will then check this one more time, and if so, this should be adequate to be referred to the PESC.
So the Placemaking and Economy and
May I
Sustainable
speak
Committee.
briefly about this?
Yeah. Yes, please do.
Thank you, Chair. So now that we've got a budget, I feel like this is quite good timing, which is the next big council project is probably going to be the local plan, which we hope will be submitted to the planning inspector in March. But I'm presenting this petition on behalf of Sustainable Pillen District, highlighting serious concerns about the local plan. I've told you the number of signatories. In fact, 2,324 residents have signed this, but because this was through change.org, the way that people say what their postcode is, which relates to what email they've used to sign, shows that actually about over 1,500 were listed outside of North Somerset, mostly in Bristol. But for your information, if you do this in future, this is what happens with change.org. So there are probably at least 1,000 or 2,000 others who are in North Somerset who support this. I promised that I would read out the petition. It's not very long, but in short, the plan for Pill, as you know, includes recommendations to build 1,000 houses on 4 areas of greenbelt land around the village. This would increase the number of homes by around 40%, threatening to turn our small friendly village into a fragmented suburb of Bristol and destroy acres of beautiful green space. It will also put huge pressure on existing infrastructure, particularly roads. There is definitely a need for more housing, particularly affordable housing in North Somerset. However, in our view, the number proposed for Pill is completely out of proportion with the size of the village. We believe that the additional housing should be more fairly shared across North Somerset. The council ran a consultation about the local plan proposals from the 7th of February to the 21st of March last year. However, it was poorly publicised, and conversations with local residents suggest very few people knew about the consultation or the extent of the proposals. North Somerset Council received only 29 consultation responses to the proposals for each site. This is a village with a population of over 4,000. And several responses were from developers, businesses, which would benefit directly from the development going ahead. That's the substantive text of the petition. But as a cabinet member, just to add, I did vote on this draft plan going through, including these proposals, but I acknowledge that there is still a lot of doubt about whether central government is going to invest in the local infrastructure to support our local plan. And recently, at a local neighbourhood health event, GPs in the area told me that they're incredibly worried about an extra 1,000 homes in their area. And I've asked many times, including to the NHS estates and the Integrated Care Board, which is the NHS for our area, they've told me that there are no plans for increasing GP capacity. So I won't even start on Junction 19 or the provision for active travel or road maintenance or bus services. So I would just ask, is this how we plan for healthy and sustainable development? It isn't. So I hope with this local plan, through the inspector, we can do better. As the number of signatures is more than 500, but less than 2,500, I believe this will be referred to discussion at Placemaking, Economy and Sustainable Communities Policy and Scrutiny Panel. And I do hope we will have a full and proper discussion then, care of the Chair, Councillor Bird. Thank you.
Thank you. Anamika.
Yes, can I just very quickly respond to that? I just want to reassure Jenna that I've been in touch with the planning team about this already, and they are considering the content, understand very clearly the local concerns, and that this will be passed to the appointed planning inspection in due course. Just want to reassure you that it isn't just going to go anywhere. It is going to be taken into account. Thank you.
So the petition is, as it were, being presented, has it? It's not something physically going to be given over. That's fine. Okay, right. So my announcements then, the next bit. Well, so much has happened since our last meeting. I have attended a few events as your representative, one being at the police headquarters in Portishead when I was introduced to Her Majesty the Queen on her visit, when she came to learn how domestic abuse is dealt with by our local police force. I would also like to thank those of you who came to the Christmas event I held in Nailsea, which was to offer thanks to our volunteers. I really appreciated those of you who were able to come. And actually, one of the invitees said this should be an annual event. So, Caritas, over to you. Also, I'm sorry that some of you weren't able to come that night because it was a really lovely night and the food was absolutely fantastic. And it was, no cost to the council, I would like to say. Okay, I'm also delighted to advise the council that we have been shortlisted in not one, not two, but 3 categories for this year's Local Government Chronicle Awards. The LGC Awards represent the pinnacle of local government recognition, and to be shortlisted multiple times is testament to the industry-leading work our teams deliver for the people of North Somerset. The shortlisted projects are Elm Grove Housing Development. Our partnership includes Alliance and a commercial delivery partner. This exciting project balances quality, sustainability and affordable housing, something we know we all need. Our environmental services are recognised, the first local authority in England to introduce a district-wide curbside collection of soft plastics. So that's fantastic news. And thirdly, our digital innovation activity has been shortlisted. Our bespoke education and healthcare A1 tool ensures that children and families with special educational needs receive a timely assessment, over 90% of determinations within the required time scale. And we all know what a challenge that is. So one of the best performance standards in the country. Our 3 nominations will be judged in April and kept secret until the awards ceremony in June. I hope we do well, and my huge thanks to all of you who are involved in the projects and the submissions. And lastly, for our new councillors, I do hope you've enjoyed your first council meeting, despite the challenges we face. So it's been a long and arduous one. They're not all quite like that, but it's great that you've been here to witness it, really. Okay, and over to you. Any announcements? Oh, nothing from you? Nothing from anybody else. So any urgent business? None, thank goodness. And so with that, I close the meeting. Thank you all.